Chapter 6680. Have Bai Lu Chuan and Guan Hongtian been up to anything recently? Bailey Hongzhuang asked after putting away the invitation. Gong Jun shook his head slightly. I don't know what's wrong with them, but they've been very quiet recently. Nothing's happened. That's good. Bailey Hongzhuang was relieved. It wasn't until Gong Jun left that she sat down on a stone bench in the courtyard. There was a thoughtful look on her face. Master, what are you thinking about? Xiao He jumped onto the table and tilted her head to look at her master in puzzlement. I'm just thinking that Bai Lu Chuan and Guan Hongtian have been too quiet recently. It's a little strange. Perhaps they know that master is not to be trifled with, so they've temporarily stopped. I hope so. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows slightly. Although in my heart, they aren't such tactful people. As the city lord's birthday approached, the entire Xi'an city seemed to be livelier. When Bailey Hongzhuang saw that Di Beichen hadn't come out of seclusion, she thought that perhaps only she and Gong Jun would be going together today. However, just as she was about to set off, Beichen exited his cultivation state. Wife, are you ready to set off? Di Beichen stood up. His picturesque eyebrows were beautiful to begin with, and his gentle voice was even more touching. I thought you wouldn't be able to make it today, Bailey Hongzhuang said with a smile. Wait for me for a moment. I'll change my clothes. All right. Boss, wait. Just as Di Beichen was about to go in to change his clothes, he saw a round figure roll in like a ball. There was a look of anxiety on his face. What's the matter? Stopping in his tracks, Di Beichen looked at Gong Jun in puzzlement. Could something have happened at this critical juncture? Who knew that after Gong Jun stopped, he had a smile on his face? Boss, today is the city lord's birthday. We have to dress formally. You and Madam usually dress too simply. I specially sent someone to customize a set of clothes for you today. Quick! Put on the clothes I prepared for you. Gong Jun handed the clothes in his hand to Di Beichen, his eyes full of anticipation. Today is the city lord's birthday, not ours. Why do we need to dress so grandly? Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled. She had never spent too much effort in this regard, as long as she was not rude. You usually like to wear white, but today is a happy occasion. It's not good to wear white. Listen to me and change. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang thought about it and felt that Gong Jun's words were very polite. Looking at the red and white clothes in her hand, it was very appropriate, so she did not refuse. All right then, wait for us for a moment. We'll come out after changing. Soon, Bailey Hongzhuang finished changing. Feeling the texture of the clothes, a look of satisfaction appeared on her face. Gong Jun had obviously spent some effort on the clothes. The material was very comfortable. It was as thin as a cicada's wing and had a great touch. The size was indeed tailor-made. Wife, I'm done. Di Beichen slowly walked in front of Bailey Hongzhuang. His face was full of smiles like a spring breeze, or like spring returning to the earth. Looking at the handsome man with sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but be shocked. Chapter 6681. Hongzhuang had always known that Beichen was extremely good-looking, but this appearance of wearing luxurious clothes gave her a completely different feeling. Di Beichen looked at the woman in red in front of him, and a trace of amazement flashed across his brows. Different from her usual elegance and purity, there was a trace of enchanting charm, which made people's eyes light up. Oh my God, this is amazing. Gong Jun looked at the two people in front of him in admiration and couldn't help but applaud. My taste. TSK, this dress suits you too well. Looking at Gong Jun's exaggerated expression, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen couldn't help but chuckle. All right, you don't have to show off. It's not appropriate to be late on a day like today. Let's go now. The three of them walked towards the city lord's mansion, and along the way, they met many people who were also going to the city lord's mansion to deliver gifts. Looking at such a large scale, Xiao He couldn't help but say in surprise, there are actually so many people attending the city lord's birthday banquet. This is simply a grand occasion. Gong Jun smiled faintly. You don't know this, but it's the city lord's birthday banquet. Everyone naturally wants to express their sincerity, but most people only send congratulatory gifts. there aren't many who actually attend. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang also understood this kind of situation couldn't be more normal. The city lord's status in the city was not to be underestimated, especially when doing business. Everyone had to rely on the city lord. On such a day, even if they weren't qualified to attend, they definitely couldn't be lacking in etiquette. When the three of them arrived at the city lord's mansion, they saw City Lord Bai Ziyuan and Bai Qingli standing outside the door to welcome guests, congratulatory voices resounding everywhere, and the entire City Lord's mansion was filled with a joyous scene. "Miss Bailey, young Master D, you're here." After seeing Bailey Hongzhuang, Bai Qingli quickly walked over, a rare smile appearing on his handsome face. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and cupped her hands. "Congratulations, we're here to celebrate the City Lord's birthday. Come, please come in." Bai Qingli waved his hand, and a servant took the congratulatory gifts from Gong Jun's hands, and the three of them walked in front of Bai Ziyuan. "Congratulations to the City Lord on his birthday." After seeing them, Bai Ziyuan smiled. "Thank you, please come in." Almost everyone who came here was trying to find a way to say a few words to the City Lord. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others no longer bothered them, and under the personal guidance of Bai Qingli, they entered the City Lord's mansion. Unlike the outside, it was unlike the outside, it was unlike the outside, it was unlike the outside. It was not as luxurious as the outside. At the inside, it was not like the inside. There was a feeling of secluded mountains. At this moment, there was an endless stream of servants and maids. All kinds of fruits and snacks were constantly being served, and the wine and tea emitted a faint fragrance. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. She hadn't seen such a lively scene for a long time. "There are many snacks prepared here. If there's anything you like, just try it. There's no need to be restrained." Bai Qingli was very friendly. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. Looking at the man's rosy face, she smiled and said, "It seems that you've been doing well recently." Chapter 66-82. Thinking of this, Bai Qingli was extremely grateful to Bailey Hongzhuang. He was also very aware of how good the medical skills of the pharmacists in the City Lord's mansion were. So when he heard from this person that Bailey Hongzhuang's medical skills were far better than his heart was shocked. Because Bailey Hongzhuang was just too young. Although he was also shocked when he was saved, he only understood how difficult it was for him to keep his life after coming back. This was also his luck. The heavens left him a way out. This is also because you've been recuperating since you came back. Seeing Bai Qingli's complexion, Bailey Hongzhuang knew that he had recovered. The self-destruction of humans and monsters were different. Although she and Beichun were injured, their foundation was not damaged. Compared to Bai Qingli, their injuries were much lighter. That's right, the City Lord of Qingyang City, I told you before, will also come today. When the time comes, I will think of a way to get the illusion form bead for you. Don't worry. Bai Qingli gave her a look. Compared to Bailey Hongzhuang's life-saving grace, the cultivation resources he gave her back then were nothing. He had always felt like he owed her. Fortunately, he knew that Bailey Hongzhuang cared a lot about the illusion form bead. As long as he could find the illusion form bead, he would have a way to repay her. Seeing the man's serious appearance, Bailey Hongzhuang thought for a moment before saying, "Then thank you, Sir Bai." She really did need the illusion form bead, but with her status, it was too difficult to get it from the City Lord of Qingyang City. It was much easier for Bai Qingli to do this. "You're welcome. It's what I should do." Bai Qingli smiled and said, "You guys take a seat first. I still have to greet the guests. Hurry up and get busy." Only after Bai Qingli left did Bailey Hongzhuang and the others continue to walk inside. "Beichun, you guys are here." Hearing a surprised voice, Di Beichun turned his head and saw Di Xiaofeng, Mo Yunjue, and Zhongli Mu walking over. "Today, you guys." Di Xiaofeng looked at the two people in front of him with surprise. "Looks really extraordinary." Zhongli Mu was also surprised. "You guys look really good today." Suddenly being praised, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun looked at each other and heard him say with a smile, "This is all Gong Jun's idea. If you're interested, ask him to tell you the name of the shop, and you can order a few custom-made." Di Xiaofeng raised his eyebrows. "The weather is getting colder. Yin should buy some clothes." "Gong Jun, you have to tell me later." "Big brother, there's no need for you to worry. Leave it to me. Gong Jun was as friendly as ever. Ever since he found out that Di Xiaofeng was Beichen's big brother, he called him that. Di Xiaofeng didn't care about this. This guy's personality was like this, but it wasn't annoying. Look, Bai Lu Chuan is right in front. Di Xiaofeng raised his eyebrows and pointed not far away. Bailey Hongzhuang followed the line of sight, and sure enough, she met Bai Liu Chuan's gaze, which was still too late to retract. It was full of resentment, as usual. From this, it could be seen that even though this guy had stopped for a while, this matter was still on his mind. Chapter 66-83. Upon hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang revealed a look of understanding. As expected, this guy was definitely not someone who would stop easily. After being locked up for a few months, I'm afraid he hates us even more now, Mo Yunjue said coldly. Guanhan Tian is right beside Bai Lu Chuan. These two fellows might pull some dirty tricks when they get together. You guys have to be prepared. At this moment, a slightly unfamiliar voice sounded behind Di Beichen. Everyone could not help but turn their heads. Gong Jun looked at the stranger in front of him with a complicated expression. They didn't have any interactions with this person, but he suddenly said such words. It seemed that he understood their situation very well. Bailey Hongzhuang sized up the man in front of her. For some reason, she vaguely felt that she had seen this person somewhere before, but she could not remember where. She did not have a deep impression of him. However, after Di Beichen looked at the man for a moment, the corners of his lips curled into a faint smile. So it's you. I really didn't expect you to be first in this competition. If I had known, I wouldn't have told you, the man said with a chuckle. After Bailey Hongzhuang heard this, she thought carefully for a moment before remembering where she had seen this person before. That's the person who told us to get the numbered identity card back then. Miss, you have a good memory. I thought you had forgotten about me. The man chuckled. Let me introduce myself. I'm Mu Haiqing. Just as Di Beichun was about to introduce himself, he heard the man say, Young Master Di, Miss Bailey, I already know. Everyone has amazed everyone in the demon slaying competition. There aren't many people in Shiyin City who don't know you. I didn't expect to see young Master Mu here again. Nice to meet you. Mu Haiqing cupped his hands. It's fate that brought us together. I don't have any ill intentions. I just want to remind you that I vaguely heard that Bai Lu Chuan and Guanhan Tian seem to have some plans. In short, these two people are full of evil tricks. It's always good to be on guard at all times. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyebrows revealed a trace of surprise. This person is really interesting. Could it be that he likes to meddle in other people's business? If it were an ordinary person, they would definitely not be willing to offend Guan Bai Lu Chuan. They would not get involved in such matters if they could. However, this person actually took the initiative to get involved. After saying this, Mu Haiqing turned around and walked away. This person is strange. He said such a sentence without any rhyme or reason. I wonder if he is a friend or foe. Di Beichen looked at Gong Jun. Have you heard of this person? Mu Haiqing, this name sounds familiar to me, but I can't recall at the moment. Let me think about it first. Gong Jun's brows were tightly knitted. It was obvious that he had some recollection of this person. Seeing this, Zai Hongrun didn't urge him. Even if Gong Jun really couldn't remember, after the birthday banquet was over, he would go back and check. However, Gong Jun's memory did not disappoint everyone. Very soon, he remembered everything. I remember now. This Mu Haiqing. Quickly tell me, who is he? Zhongli Mu asked curiously. Gong Jun's expression changed. Speaking of this Mu Haiqing, he is also a character. However, he and Bai Lu Chuan can be said to be mortal enemies on the surface. Chapter 66-84. Speaking of which, back then, Bai Lu Chuan and Mu Hailan were a match made in heaven, attracting the envy of many. City Lord Bai had always liked to fulfill the wishes of others. After learning of their feelings, he set up a marriage contract. At that time, Mu Haiqing and Bai Liu Chuan's relationship was very good. However, Bai Lu Chuan was a womanizer. Back then, he liked Mu Hailan because she was beautiful, but as a man, there were many who changed their minds. Not long after the marriage, Bai Lu Chuan continued to be a womanizer. Later on, This matter became more and more strained. Mu Haiqing was very angry when he saw Bai Luchuan treat Mu Hailan in such a way. He often found opportunities to teach Bai Luchuan a lesson. Bai Luchuan wasn't weak either. When the two of them fought, they naturally won and lost. A wistful look appeared on Gong Jun's face. I remember that Mu Hailan was already pregnant back then. However, Bai Luchuan had another fight with Mu Haiqing. When he returned and saw Mu Hailan crying, he was extremely angry. The exact situation that day has been sealed by City Lord Manor. All we know is that Mu Hailan died that night. From then on, Mu Haiqing and Bai Luchuan became mortal enemies. After hearing all of this, Bailey Hongzhuang's expression gradually turned cold. As a woman, Mu Hailan's experience was truly worthy of sympathy. I originally thought that Bai Luchuan was terrible enough, but I never expected him to be so terrible. She couldn't determine how Mu Hailan died, but she was certain that it had something to do with Bai Luchuan. Such a man is worse than an animal. Di Xiaofeng spat inwardly. As a man, he looked down on such people the most. Mu Hailan was blind back then. She actually fell for such a fellow. What a pity. Gong Jun shook his head. What I can be sure of is that Mu Haiqing really hates Bai Luchuan. The reason why he has been staying in Shiyun City is probably to kill Bai Luchuan to avenge his sister. Bailey Hongzhuang and company had a look of understanding in their eyes. If they were in Mu Haiqing's shoes, they would probably want to kill that bastard. From the looks of it, Mu Haiqing is on our side, Di Beichun said slowly. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Mu Hailan's help and his reminder made sense now. Then what did he remind us of just now? Bailey Hongzhuang frowned slightly. After finding out that Mu Haiqing was not an enemy, his previous warning became very interesting. Mo Yunjue looked around and his face darkened. Don't tell me they're going to play some tricks on this occasion. I don't think there will be any problems with today's situation. Gong Jun's expression also became a little more serious. Today, almost all the reputable people in Shiyun City were here. If something were to happen, it would be very embarrassing. Let's wait and see. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was as usual as she walked to the side and picked up a piece of pastry to taste. So far, nothing had happened. If they were too nervous, they would be at a disadvantage. Qingyang City's city lord has arrived. At this moment, a loud voice sounded from outside the door. Hearing this voice, everyone present could not help but look outside the door. In their line of sight, a tall and straight figure slowly appeared in front of Bai Ziyuan. Brother Yang, welcome, welcome. Chapter 66-85. You're an honored guest. It's not a big deal today, so I've troubled you to come. Bai Ziyuan smiled. You're treating me like an outsider. We've known each other for many years. How could I not come to your birthday celebration? Yang Han turned to the man and woman behind him and said, Quickly greet Uncle Bai. Uncle Bai. Bailey Hongzhuang saw a very young man and woman. The two people's eyebrows were somewhat similar. Obviously, they were brother and sister. Nephew and niece are both here. Quickly come in. Bai Ziyuan called Bai Qingli and Bai Luchuan over. You young people can interact with each other. Father, don't worry. Bai Qingli nodded. Bai Ziyuan did not continue to stand outside the door. Clearly, he had been waiting outside for City Lord Yang's arrival. As everyone took their seats, the banquet officially began. City Lord Bai was not very formal, so the entire City Lord's mansion was very comfortable. Xiao He and Xiao Bai ate the snacks in front of them to their heart's content. The food the City Lord's mansion took out to entertain people was naturally not bad. It was much better than what they usually ate in restaurants. During this process, many people took the initiative to befriend Di Beichun and the others. After all, they were first place in the demon slaying competition. There was no harm in befriending such young talents. Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze fell into the distance. There were many alchemists participating in the banquet today. Ever since the competition ended, she had wanted to get to know some alchemists. She did not know much about the demon crystal alchemy, and she had never tried to refine it directly. If she could take advantage of today's opportunity to befriend a few people, it would be very good. However, she did not know much about the people of Shiyun City. It was not appropriate to rashly disturb them. In this regard, Gong Jun was also unable to help. He was a businessman. Although alchemists often dealt with shops and auctions, they were often unwilling to pay attention to such occasions. It was as if this was the only way to show their noble temperament. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang was deep in thought, Qingli walked over again. "Miss Bailey, let me introduce you. This is Apothecary Wei Shang. He is also the apothecary who often treats me." A man who looked to be in his 50s stood beside Qingli. Unlike the arrogance of the other pharmacists, he had a kind of amiable kindness. When he saw Bailey Hongzhuang, he was the first to smile. "Little friend Bailey, nice to meet you." "Greetings, Medicine Master Wei," Bailey Hongzhuang said politely. "Ever since Medicine Master Wei saw my injuries, he's been hoping to get to know you. Since we're all here today, why don't you have a chat?" Qingli winked at Bailey Hongzhuang and transmitted her voice. "Medicine Master Wei is very famous in Xi'an City. He can be considered a highly respected senior." "Thank you." Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. She secretly thought that Qingli was very smart. She knew what she needed and immediately sent it over. Since this person was highly respected, he must be very skilled in alchemy. If she did not understand anything, she could ask him for advice. "Little friend Bailey, I saw that Qingli's injuries were very serious. I wonder what kind of medicine you used to improve his condition?" Chapter 66-86. It's indeed inappropriate for me to rashly ask about this. However, this old man has been racking his brains recently and still can't figure it out. I hope that little friend can enlighten me. Bailey Hongzhuang didn't reject Wei Shang's politeness. "Senior," at that time, I could only do my best to treat her. Bailey Hongzhuang knew very well that if she wanted to know what she wanted to know from the other party, she would have to tell him something first. Therefore, she didn't hide this point. After all, the more sincere she was now, the more difficult it would be for Wei Shang to avoid answering her questions later. As she explained the meaning of the treatment method at that time, a trace of understanding appeared on Wei Shang's face. It turns out that these few medicinal herbs have such a curative effect when added together. It's really enlightening. I was a bit stubborn before. After Wei Shang understood, he finally understood that when many medicinal herbs were put together, they would have a completely different effect. The method that Bailey Hongzhuang mentioned was like the finishing touch. Usually, people wouldn't use such a method when treating people, and changing the way of thinking would give them a completely different feeling. Seeing Wei Shang's look of sudden realization, Bailey Hongzhuang felt a little funny. This situation was just like when she listened to Granny Hua's explanation. Granny Hua's attainments in this field were definitely not comparable to ordinary people. At that time, she was in this kind of new thinking every day. However, as her thinking expanded, she realized that there were many ways to treat people, and changing the way of thinking often had unexpected results. However, there was one thing that she didn't tell Wei Shang. The effect of these medicinal herbs was excellent, but Qingli's injuries were too critical at that time. Even if she used these medicinal herbs, she might not be able to recover. The reason why she was able to completely recover was because she used the Saintis crystal. This kind of treasure was not something that ordinary items could compare to. Naturally, its effects were needless to say. Obviously, Wei Shang didn't think too much about it. He probably didn't know how serious Qingli's injuries were at that time. "Little friend Bailey is so young, yet you already have such shocking attainments in the field of medicine. This is truly admirable. In the future, your name will definitely resound throughout the immortal realms." Wei Shang looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in amazement. With just a few words, he had already discovered that Bailey Hongzhuang had a completely different way of thinking from him. This kind of thing was already very shocking at the moment. In the future, as long as Bailey Hongzhuang continued to develop, her influence would definitely expand rapidly. "Senior, you flatter me. I don't dare to be your senior. To be honest, your comprehension in this aspect is much deeper than mine," Yi Zichen said with a smile. Bailey Hongzhuang was a little surprised. Looking at the situation, wasn't Wei Shang a little too careless? "Little friend, you could just call me by my name. After all, you're much younger than me. It's not good for me to address you as my senior. How about we treat each other as equals?" Looking at Wei Shang's expectant expression, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded her head. She couldn't help but think of the few old fellows she knew in the past. They also had the same personality. It was really nostalgic. Then I'll overstep. No, no. Chapter 6687. Wei Shang's status among the pharmacists in Xi'an City was not simple. Guan Hongtian did not expect Bai Qingli to take such good care of Bailey Hongzhuang and specially introduce her to Pharmacist Wei. From the way they chatted happily, Pharmacist Wei should also be very fond of Bailey Hongzhuang. He had thought that these guys had just arrived in Xi'an City and that it would be easy to take them down. He did not expect that in just a short period of time, these guys' foundation would become more and more stable. Young Master Lu Chuan, Bai Qingli takes such good care of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. If this continues, it will be even more difficult for us to take them down in the future. Guan Hongtian looked to his side worriedly. Previously, due to the framing incident, the Wanbao Pavilion's reputation had been greatly affected. Their business had also suffered a lot. On the other hand, the Immortal Treasure Pavilion's reputation was becoming more and more resounding. In the end, the Immortal Treasure Pavilion had always relied on Di Baichen's confinement killing array and Bailey Hongzhuang's pills. In fact, he knew very well that although the two of them had always been providing the Immortal Treasure Pavilion, they had put more effort into cultivation. Therefore, these could only be the Immortal Treasure Pavilion's last resort. However, recently, some pharmacists and refiners in the city had turned to the Immortal Treasure Pavilion for sale. This made him very unhappy. Evil King's beloved wife, arrogant demon concubine, is too heaven-defying. In the past, the Wanbao Pavilion had always been everyone's first choice. Isn't it all because of your incompetence in the past? Bai Luchuan looked at Guan Hongtian with disdain. It was clearly a good hand, but this guy had ruined it. I didn't expect this to happen. Then why didn't you buy a few more array stones back then and study them properly? Wouldn't you have found the problem if you had observed more? Bai Luchuan said coldly. Guan Hongtian was speechless. He had indeed failed in that matter, but leaving a mark on an array stone was indeed something that had never happened before. Be careful in the future. If something like this happens again, don't expect me to help you. Yes, yes. Bai Luchuan's gaze turned to Bailey Hongzhuang. This woman was becoming more and more smug. It made him very unhappy. Let's wait for a good show today. I'll let them have a good taste of what it's like to be defeated. His pitch-black eyes narrowed slightly, revealing resentment and viciousness. Because of these guys, it was the first time he had been punished by the city lord, and he had been confined for so long. It was simply a great humiliation. Sister Qinxue, why are you here alone? I thought brother was taking care of you. Bai Luchuan walked to Yang Qinxue's side with a smile. Yang Qinxue raised her eyebrows. Brother, Qingli brought Pharmacist Wei over there. They must be busy. Having said that, Lu Qingyue's gaze constantly fell on Bailey Hongzhuang. Bai Luchuan took in everything as a plan surfaced in his mind. So Big Brother went to look for Miss Bailey. No wonder. Miss Bailey. Yang Qinxue's expression immediately changed when she heard this name. Clearly, she had been silently paying attention. Bai Luchuan nodded calmly. Previously, Big Brother was injured in the demon-slaying competition and almost lost his life. It was all thanks to Miss Bailey that he was saved. She is Big Brother's savior. Chapter 6688. Miss Bailey has indeed saved Big Brother's life. However, her strength is also extremely outstanding. Her medical skills have also reached perfection. Currently, who knows how many men in the entire Xi'an City have fallen in love with her. However, ordinary men are obviously unable to enter her eyes. Bai Luchuan smiled, and there was a trace of yearning between his eyebrows. In Yang Qinxue's eyes, it was his admiration for Bailey Hongzhuang. These words just happened to poke at the problem that she was most concerned about. She had always been known as a beauty, but after coming here today, she found that this woman's appearance was simply astonishing. Even she couldn't help but feel a sense of inferiority. If she did not see it with her own eyes, it would be difficult to imagine that such a peerless beauty existed in the world. When she saw Bailey Hongzhuang's sweet smile, she felt more and more jealous. Brother Qingli had never been close to women. However, this Bailey Hongzhuang was indeed a little too special. Medicine Master Wei, I also have something to ask you. When Bailey Hongzhuang saw that Wei Shang had recovered from the previous question, she took the opportunity to ask her own question. Little friend, there's no harm in asking. I heard that the demon crystals of monsters can be used to refine pills. This is the first time I've seen a monster. I'm really curious about this demon crystal. I hope Medicine Master Wei can give me some advice. Hearing this, Wei Shang understood and immediately said with a smile, I see. All medicine masters who have just entered the chaotic immortal realm are usually very interested in this. Today, I'll explain it to you. Thank you, Medicine Master Wei. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes lit up. She was originally worried that her question would delay Wei Shang's time. It would be bad if she made him impatient. However, she did not expect Wei Shang to be so interested in chatting with her. She was completely relieved. Actually, many medicine masters only began to study the demon crystals after the appearance of monsters a few years ago. The demon crystals of monsters are usually blood red and have different attributes. However, most of them are of the dark attribute. As long as the impurities in these demon crystals were removed, the remaining energy could be said to be very pure. If used in medicine, the effect would be excellent. According to our observations, pills of different attributes only need to be refined with demon crystals of different attributes, and the quality of the pills refined will be higher. So, what has such an effect? Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly understood. She had also thought about this before. Don't look at how it only increased the quality of the pill by 1 level. In fact, the gap between the two was very big. It was the same medicinal herbs, but with the addition of demon crystals, the effect of the elixir had improved so much. Perhaps the commonly used pills weren't much, but there were some pills that cultivators couldn't take too many times. Naturally, the better the effect, the better. Even so, it's not easy to refine the impurities in the demon crystal. Wei Shang looked at Bailey Hongzhuang's happy expression and knew that she was oversimplifying things, so she deliberately emphasized the main point. The demon crystals of these monsters often contain a lot of violent qi, blood, cruelty, and other negative emotions. Only by completely removing these things can the best effect be brought out. According to our current progress, there are very few medicine masters who can completely remove these impurities. Aside from a few occasional situations where it could be done, it was extremely difficult to do so at any other time. Chapter 66-89. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded in understanding. Monsters hadn't been around for a long time, and all the pharmacists in Shiyun City were probably researching them. It would take a lot of time to thoroughly study them. However, she had a few more tricks up her sleeves than the average pharmacist. Since she possessed both darkness and light attributes, it would be easier for her to remove the impurities compared to people with other attributes. Regardless, she would go back and do some research after today's birthday banquet. Wei Shang saw the expression on Bailey Hongzhuang's face and understood that his words had not stopped her curiosity. Thinking about it, such a young girl already had such achievements. Even if she spent more time studying it, what's the point of it? As a pharmacist, it was important to maintain some curiosity. Little friend Bailey, you haven't been in Shiyun City for long. Coincidentally, there are many pharmacists here today. How about I introduce you to the other pharmacists? Wei Shang loved Bailey Hongzhuang from the bottom of his heart. At his age, the happiest thing for him was to see a young person doing well. There were many people in the city whose medical skills couldn't compare to Bailey Hongzhuang's, but they were much more impetuous and arrogant. Bailey Hongzhuang was such a simple-minded girl, but she was like a clear stream, making people like her very much. Bailey Hongzhuang looked up and saw the kindness and admiration in Wei Shang's eyes. She nodded in agreement. Thank you very much, Pharmacist Wei. You're welcome. With your strength, as long as you continue to stay in Shiyun City, you'll get to know these people sooner or later. After greeting Di Beichun, Bailey Hongzhuang followed Wei Shang to where the other pharmacists were gathered. Pharmacist Wei. Pharmacist Wei. The pharmacists who were chatting happily restrained themselves when they saw Wei Shang appear. Their postures were respectful. Wei Shang smiled faintly. Long time no see, everyone. Pharmacist Wei is usually busy studying medicine and rarely goes out. Naturally, it's rare to see him. I'm very happy to have the opportunity to meet him today. Pharmacist Wei, this one has something to ask of you today. In the blink of an eye, the group of pharmacists had surrounded Wei Shang. As for Bailey Hongzhuang behind him, she was completely ignored. Seeing this, Wei Shang suddenly spoke up. Everyone, please calm down. We'll talk about this matter later. Today, I'd like to introduce a little friend to everyone. He turned his head and pushed Bailey Hongzhuang in front of him. Little friend Bailey Hongzhuang's medical skills are already outstanding at such a young age. As Wei Shang's voice fell, everyone's eyes fell on Bailey Hongzhuang. Although many people there now that this girl had appeared in front of them again, they couldn't help but feel a little uncomfortable. But when they heard Wei Shang call Bailey Hongzhuang little friend, they understood Wei Shang's admiration for her. So, it's little friend Bailey Hongzhuang. Nice to meet you. I've long heard of yours. Seeing you today, you're indeed extraordinary. The few compliments were scattered. Just by listening to them, one could tell how distant they were. Chapter 6690. When Wei Shang saw everyone's attitude towards Bailey Hongzhuang, he couldn't help but frown. Could it be that something had happened that he wasn't aware of? Otherwise, everyone's attitude was a little strange. You all really know how to act. A man looked disdainfully at the people who were feigning civility. This smile is uglier than crying. I don't know what's so funny. Niu Su, don't go overboard with your words. How am I going overboard? Isn't that the truth? Niu Su's face was full of disdain. I think that Miss Bailey is not only outstanding in medical skills, her poison skills are also first class. I really admire you. I really admire you. His drawn-out tone was full of ridicule, and even the stupidest person could understand that he was deliberately insulting her. However, Bailey Hongzhuang acted as if she didn't hear any of this and smiled faintly. You flatter me. Niu Su's expression was blank, and his heart was instantly filled with anger. As a doctor, you actually poison people. I can't learn this kind of method. After coldly throwing this sentence, Niu Su turned around and walked away. His manner clearly showed that he disdained to be associated with Bailey Hongzhuang. When the crowd saw that someone had taken the lead, they couldn't be bothered to pretend anymore and retreated to the side with waning interest. Wei Shang obviously didn't expect this situation. According to his conversation with this girl, he felt that this girl was very polite and wasn't like what everyone said. Medicine Master Wei, I've let you down. Hongzhuang naturally didn't care about the thoughts of others, but she couldn't help but feel apologetic towards Medicine Master Wei. However, these fellows were all too petty. It had been quite a while since that incident, and they still hadn't let it go. This breadth of mind, I didn't understand the situation clearly. Wei Shang shook his head with an apologetic look on his face. Little friend, can you tell me what happened just now? Bailey Hongzhuang didn't mind and immediately recounted what had happened. After hearing everything, Wei Shang laughed. I see. No wonder everyone has such an attitude. You don't mind? Wei Shang said indifferently. As an alchemist, if you can heal others, you can naturally harm others as well. At this point, who can say that they have never harmed others? They are merely trying to save face, so there's really no need to care about it. However, from your appearance, I believe that you do not take it to heart. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. It's not a big deal. I'm already very happy to have met you today. Haha, so do I. The two chatted for a while before Wei Shang left. Bailey Hongzhuang wanted to find Bei Chun, but she found a figure blocking her way. Looking at the beautiful woman in front of her, there was a trace of surprise in her eyes. Wasn't this person City Lord Yang's daughter? You like Brother Qingli? Yang Qinxue stood in front of Bailey Hongzhuang and got straight to the point. Bailey Hongzhuang stared at Yang Qinxue in astonishment. This girl had suddenly appeared in front of her and asked such a strange question. However, she quickly understood that Yang Qinxue must be in love with Bai Qingli. Yang Qinxue had originally thought that all women couldn't resist looking at Bailey Hongzhuang up close. However, after looking at Bailey Hongzhuang up close, she found Bailey Hongzhuang to be even more perfect. Miss Yang, you're mistaken. I have no feelings towards Master Bai. Chapter 6691. If you like him, then you like him. What's there to deny? Yang Qinxue looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with some disdain. If you admit it frankly, I can still think highly of you. Being so timid makes me unhappy. Seeing Yang Qinxue's worried, jealous, and conflicted look, Bailey Hongzhuang also found it very interesting. It was rare to see a girl with such a genuine temperament. I'm already married. Faced with Yang Qinxue's disbelief, Bailey Hongzhuang could only use her ultimate move. The effect of this move should be the most obvious. Sure enough, after hearing this, Yang Qinxue was dumbfounded. You? What did you just say? Bailey Hongzhuang pointed at Di Beichun not far away and said, That's my husband. Di Beichun noticed Bailey Hongzhuang's actions and walked over. As soon as he came over, he said, Wife, what's wrong? After hearing this address, Yang Qinxue completely understood that she had made a mistake. She felt that she had thought of him as an imaginary enemy for a long time, but it turned out that he was already taken. She did not have any improper thoughts at all. Immediately, she felt awkward. I'm sorry, I made a mistake. Yang Qinxue felt ashamed for a moment. She cursed by Lu Chuan in her heart. It was all his fault for saying such inexplicable things to her, causing her to come here and embarrass herself. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and said, Mistakes are common. Miss Yang is a thoughtful person. I'm sure you'll get what you want. Looking at the woman's understanding look, Yang Qinxue's face turned red. Her original thoughts of tit for tat dissipated. Such a woman really made people want to befriend her. Thank you for saving Brother Qingli. If there's anything I can help you with in the future, don't hesitate. After understanding this point, Yang Qinxue returned to her original straightforward personality. Then I'll thank Miss Yang first. You're welcome. I should be the one thanking you first. Yang Qinxue smiled and waved her hand. You guys continue chatting. I'm leaving. Seeing Yang Qinxue leave like a wisp of smoke, Di Beichun thought of the previous changes, and his heart had some understanding. It seems that Madame has been treated as a love rival. Bailey Hongzhuang turned her head and saw Di Beichun's jealous face. She immediately smiled and said, I have such a good husband. How could I be involved in such a thing? With just one sentence, Di Beichun's face turned from gloomy to sunny, as bright as the sun. It must be by Lu Chuan and company who wanted to cause some trouble. However, I never expected wife to be so efficient. Bailey Hongzhuang followed Di Beichun's gaze and realized that Yang Qinxue had already rushed to find Bai Lu Chuan. Is Bai Lu Chuan stupid? He clearly knows our relationship, but he still said such words to make Yang Qinxue misunderstand? The woman frowned slightly. She really couldn't understand this method. It was really unwise. Di Beichun held Bailey Hongzhuang's hand. That's because he doesn't know that wife's love for me is stronger than gold. He only thinks that she's like an ordinary woman trying to curry favor with a powerful man. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head. Isn't this fellow underestimating me too much? At the same time, Yang Qinxue was aggressively questioning Bai Lu Chuan. This fellow was deliberately messing with her and embarrassing her. Chapter 6692. Yang Qinxue looked at Bai Lu Chuan suspiciously. She originally wanted to teach this fellow a lesson, but when she saw his puzzled expression, she was immediately puzzled. Could it really be like this? Bailey Hongzhuang only glanced at it and did not continue paying attention. There was a hint of thought in her eyes. Could this be the matter that Mu Haiqing came to remind us of? Di Beichun also calmed his thoughts and said, If it's just this, then it's too simple. As the daughter of Qingyang City's city lord, Yang Qinxue's identity was naturally not simple. However, once the matter of a love rival began, it would naturally be very complicated. However, it was also very simple to resolve it. If this was the only big move that Bai Lu Chuan had prepared, then it would be too simple. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. Her point of view was the same as Di Beichun's. There should be something that they had not noticed. At this moment, the two city lords were chatting happily. Seeing that City Lord Yang was chatting happily, Bai Qingli took the opportunity to make his request. Illusory form pearl. When City Lord Yang heard that Bai Qingli wanted the illusory form pearl, surprise appeared on his face. Could it be that your demon beast is unable to take human form? Bai Qingli saw that although City Lord Yang was very surprised, he did not show any signs of unwillingness on his face. He knew that there was hope for this matter. Uncle, the one who needs the illusory form pearl is not me, but my friend. Hearing this, City Lord Yang was even more puzzled. His gaze unconsciously swept across Yang Qinshue's face. Your friend? Up until now, he knew very well that Bai Qingli spent most of his time in seclusion. Although he had friends, he did not have many. At this moment, he actually came to ask for the illusory form pearl for a friend. This was really not in line with his character. He had always hoped that Bai Qingli could be together with Qinshu. However, he did not know whether the friend he mentioned was a man or a woman. Bai Qingli clearly didn't realize these problems and immediately nodded. This person is my savior. If it wasn't for her, I'm afraid I would have lost my life this time. After returning from this trip, I have always wanted to repay her. Coincidentally, I heard that her monster beast is unable to take human form, and this illusory form pearl is exactly what she needs. Therefore, I want to use this to repay her kindness. I hope that uncle can part with it. Only then did City Lord Yang understand, and the vigilance in his heart dissipated a little. Bai Ziyuan also said, Brother Yang, this illusory form bead isn't of much use to you, so why don't you give it to my son? Aren't you very interested in my calligraphy and paintings? If you like it, why don't you choose one later? City Lord Yang's eyes lit up. You brat, you usually treat that painting like a treasure. I didn't expect you to be so generous today. Of course I have to repay you for saving my life. Today, I'll be generous. City Lord Yang chuckled. Since that's the case, I naturally won't be stingy. I'll just give this illusion form bead to you. A round bead emitting a dazzling luster appeared in Yang Han's hand. It was the illusory form bead that could help demonic beasts transform. Master, Xiaohei looked forward excitedly. From the moment the illusory form bead appeared, it clearly sensed that this was a treasure. Xiao Bai's eyes also lit up. Could this be the illusory form bead? Why do I feel like this is what I've been missing? Chapter 6693. It seems that you won't be far from transforming. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Xiaohei and Xiao Bai with a smile. She had been thinking about how to let the two little fellows transform into their human forms, but she couldn't find a way. However, as long as they obtained the illusory form pearl, they would be able to see Xiaohei or Xiao Bai transform into their human forms. The only helpless thing was that there was only one illusory form pearl at the moment. If the two little fellows wanted to transform, they naturally had to find another illusory form pearl. Bailey Hongzhuang wasn't in a hurry. Since she already knew that such a treasure existed in the world, if she could find the first one, there was probably a chance to find the second one. It was only a matter of time. Xiaohei and Xiao Bai couldn't hide their excitement. Bai Shi and Xiao Xuanzi had followed their master for a shorter time than them and had long transformed into their human forms. Only they were still in this state. Fortunately, they had finally found a way to change. Bai Qingli is still very trustworthy. She said that she would fight for the illusory form pearl for us, so she will fight for it. Xiaohei looked at Bai Qingli, who was not far away, and immediately had a good impression of him. Just as Bai Qingli was about to take the illusory form pearl, Bai Liuchuan's voice suddenly sounded. City Lord Yang, this Miss Bai Li's medical skills are known to be the best in Shiyun City. I previously asked her about your young master's condition, and she said that there shouldn't be a problem. Why don't we ask her to help treat him? As soon as these words were said, the originally joyous atmosphere immediately froze. City Lord Yang's expression suddenly turned cold, and he quietly retracted his outstretched hand. Bai Ziyuan's expression also changed as he looked at Bai Luchuan with a hint of reprimand. For him to say such words in this kind of situation, he was clearly rubbing salt in the wound. However, Bai Ziyuan also understood that the reason why Bai Luchuan did this was to prevent Bailey Hongzhuang from getting what she wanted. This fellow had been locked up for so long, but he still hadn't figured this out. It was really disappointing. Bai Qingli's expression also darkened. How could he not understand that this was City Lord Yang's taboo? Bai Luchuan had actually mentioned it in front of so many people. City Lord Yang's mood would definitely be affected. What's more, because no alchemist had been able to cure him all these years, and there was an alchemist who looked down on everyone and said outrageous things, City Lord Yang never had a good impression of alchemists. If he had a good impression of Bailey Hongzhuang previously because she had saved him, then Bai Liuchuan's words had completely destroyed City Lord Yang's good impression of Bailey Hongzhuang. I don't know what kind of ability this Miss Bailey has to speak so arrogantly. It's really unexpected. City Lord Yang sneered. He had already taken back the illusory form bead. From his cold expression, it was clear that it would be very difficult to obtain the illusory form bead again. Uncle, there might be some misunderstanding. Miss Bailey isn't that kind of person. Bai Qingli couldn't help but say. In that case, Luchuan is lying? City Lord Yang asked. Bai Qingli's voice faltered. Although he knew that Bai Luchuan was looking for trouble, he couldn't say all of this in front of so many people. Otherwise, wouldn't he be completely disrespecting Bai Luchuan? Bai Luchuan naturally knew that Bai Qingli had no other choice under such circumstances. Immediately, he became even more fearless. Chapter 6694. This sudden change caught everyone off guard. When Bailey Hongzhuang saw this scene, her expression turned gloomy. So, Bai Liuchuan's real plan is here. At that moment, Bailey Hongzhuang understood everything. The reason why Bai Luchuan had said those words to Yang Qinxue was to make her hate him. When these things happened again, Yang Qinxue would definitely help him. However, he didn't expect Yang Qinxue to directly question him. In fact, if it were any other woman, they would only feel resentment under such circumstances and wouldn't ask directly. He had just misjudged Yang Qinxue's personality. Deep Beichun frowned slightly as his deep eyes revealed a trace of coldness. Xiao He and Xiao Bai had always held a high position in their hearts. Transforming into human forms had always been their wish, but Bai Luchuan wanted to destroy all of this. It was truly abominable. Hongzhuang, does City Lord Yang's son have a hidden illness? Di Xiaofeng couldn't help but ask when he saw this. He had previously noticed City Lord Yang's son. He was young, handsome, and had an extraordinary manner of speech. It didn't seem like there was anything wrong with him. My world, City of Dreams Bailey Hongzhuang also turned her head to look. This person doesn't seem to have any problems on the surface. I didn't notice it before, but from City Lord Yang's taboo appearance, there should be a problem. If that's the case, wouldn't it be fine if you can treat him? Di Xiaofeng's brows were filled with concern. He was very confident in Hongzhuang's medical skills. Bai Luchuan knows that Hongzhuang's medical skills are good, but he still said such words. It seems that this young master's illness should be very difficult to treat. Otherwise, he wouldn't have taken the initiative to give Hongzhuang a chance to become famous. Mo Yunjue said slowly in a deep voice. Deep Beichun nodded slightly. Today, I'm afraid that not only does he want us to fail to obtain the illusion form bead, but he also wants City Lord Yang to hate us. When Mayor Yang saw that Bai Qingli didn't say anything else, his face remained gloomy. Even when he looked at Bai Ziyuan, there was a trace of anger. Looking at Yang Han's appearance, Bai Ziyuan secretly sighed in his heart. This matter was originally Yang Han's taboo, and it had been mentioned in front of so many people. At a glance, many people were quietly sizing up Yang Lingfeng, guessing exactly what kind of hidden illness he had. Vampire Daddy, Unparalleled Queen, City Lord Yang, this matter. Bai Qingli wanted to say something more, but she was stopped by Ziyuan's gaze. Now that things had come to this, it was useless for them to say anything more. If he continued, it would only make Yang Han even more unhappy. City Lord Yang also understood that today was Bai Ziyuan's birthday. Naturally, he couldn't be angry with him. However, he didn't mention this matter again. At this moment, Yang Qinxue's voice suddenly sounded. Father, I got to know this Miss Bailey earlier and felt that she was a good person. She shouldn't be speaking without thinking. When these words came out, everyone present was stunned. They didn't expect Yang Qinxue to speak up for Bailey Hongzhuang at this time. Bai Qingli looked at Yang Qinxue in surprise. She knew Qin Shue's personality very well. Generally speaking, it was already good that she didn't provoke others. It was really unexpected that she would take the initiative to speak up for them. Chapter 6695. Yang Qinshue's words were very skillful. According to Bai Luchuan, Bailey Hongzhuang was young and impetuous and thought highly of herself. However, with her words, it became that she indeed had true ability and wasn't bragging. Yang Han was in a bad mood, but with his daughter speaking up for him, the dissatisfaction in his heart dissipated slightly. He knew Qinshue's personality very well. If the other party didn't have some ability, she would definitely not speak up for others. Bai Qingli looked at Yang Qinshu gratefully. He had already promised Bailey Hongzhuang today. If he couldn't fulfill it, it would be difficult for him to explain. Although he knew that Bailey Hongzhuang wouldn't blame him, he still couldn't help but feel depressed that he couldn't do what he had promised. Yang Qinshu also winked at Bai Qingli. Ever since she found out that the girl was married, she no longer had any enmity towards her. If she could help Qingli Gij complete this repayment, it would undoubtedly be for the best. Among everyone, only Bai Luchuan had a look of disbelief. He had gone through so much trouble to make Yang Qinshu feel dissatisfied with Bailey Hongzhuang. Now, not only was she not dissatisfied, she had even become a helper. Since Qinshu has seen it, I'll give you this illusory form bead. Yang Han sighed. Although his expression was still somewhat ugly, he still decided to hand the illusory form bead to Bai Qingli. After all, it was something he had promised. As an elder, it wasn't good for him to not relent. It was just that his impression of Bailey Hongzhuang was still not good. Thank you, uncle. Bai Qingli's voice was filled with excitement. He quickly put away the illusory form bead. It was as if the illusory form bead would be snatched away if he was a step too late. Upon seeing this scene, Yang Han couldn't help but laugh. How could he usually see Bai Qingli in such a state? Bai Liuchuan's expression was extremely ugly. He had deliberately appeared at this moment to ruin everything. Who would have thought that this calculated step would be so easily destroyed by Yang Qinshu? Bai Zuan heaved a sigh of relief and said to Bai Qingli, "Your Uncle Yang is really good to you." "I know." Bai Qingli smiled. The next moment, Bai Zuan turned his gaze to Bai Luchuan. As the slightly cold gaze swept over him, Bai Luchuan knew that something was wrong. The city lord was an intelligent and far-sighted person, and this little trick of his would definitely not escape his eyes. He knew that he would be punished, and he had yet to complete, if he were to return. And if he was punished, wouldn't he be a huge loss? With this in mind, Bai Luchuan almost immediately made up his mind. "Luchuan, go back first. Uncle Yang, since this Miss Bailey's medical skills are so good, why don't we let her treat you? She told me earlier that she was very confident. If she could succeed, that would be a good thing." Bai Liuchuan's face was filled with excitement. His look of anticipation made him look like he was wholeheartedly thinking about Yang Lingfeng. Not far away, Yang Lingfeng's face turned ugly when he heard the matter being brought up again. It was to be. Bye. Chapter 6696. Go back and reflect on yourself now. His cold voice was filled with anger and dignity. Bai Zuan no longer gave Bai Luchuan any face. This kid was becoming more and more lawless. He had repeatedly caused trouble at his birthday banquet just to avenge his personal grudges. It was obvious that he didn't take him, an elder, seriously at all. Seeing Bai Zuan's furious appearance, Bai Luchuan was somewhat stunned. For a moment, he stood there in a daze and forgot to move. Even though he had already expected Bai Zuan to be angry, he didn't expect him to be so angry. He had never seen such a furious appearance before. Seeing that Bai Zuan was angry, Yang Han didn't say anything. He only looked at Bai Luchuan with a hint of dissatisfaction. It had been a while since he had come to Xi'an City, so he naturally didn't understand the grudges. However, no matter how ignorant he was, he understood that there should be some grudges between Bai Luchuan and Bailey Hongzhuang. Otherwise, he wouldn't have kept causing trouble. Since there was a personal grudge, and considering by Qingli and Qinshue's previous attitude, he roughly understood that perhaps all of this wasn't what Bailey Hongzhuang had said at all. It was just Bai Luchuan adding fuel to the fire. Everyone had been young and impetuous, so they were naturally no stranger to such methods of harming others for their own benefit. However, Bai Luchuan actually wanted to use him to deal with a young lady. What did he take him for? Yang Han narrowed his eyes and immediately came up with a plan. Since Luchuan is recommending her so seriously, I believe Miss Bailey's medical skills are indeed extraordinary. Otherwise, you wouldn't have needed to spend so much effort to recommend her. Then after the banquet ends, I'll ask Miss Bailey to help with the diagnosis. With that said, Bai Ziyuan and the others looked at Yang Han in surprise. Brother Yang, Miss Bailey's medical skills are indeed not bad, but she's still a little young. Bai Ziyuan was a little worried. He admired this young girl very much. To be able to achieve such results at such a young age, as long as she continued to work hard, her future achievements were needless to say. Regardless of whether it was for the sake of Bailey Hongzhuang or for the sake of protecting young cultivators, he did not wish for Bailey Hongzhuang to get involved in this mess. Yang Han waved his hand indifferently. You don't have to be so worried. I'm just giving it a try because of Liu Chuan's recommendation. Would I make a move on such a junior? Even if it's for the sake of you and Qing Li, I wouldn't go that far. Seeing the sudden change in Yang Han's attitude, Bai Ziyuan felt a little relieved. They had known each other for so many years, and he knew that the former's personality was not the source of his ruthlessness. Things like venting his anger should not happen. He must have been angry with Liu Chuan, so he decided to give it a try today. Thinking of this, Bai Ziyuan sighed and shook his head. He used to think that Liu Chuan was a good seedling who would become a great talent in the future. Who would have thought that after all these years, his personality would become more and more narrow-minded? He also understood the hatred between young people. In the end, this hatred was between Guan Yi and Bailey Hongzhuang. It had nothing to do with Liu Chuan at all. He just wanted to be in the limelight and get involved. Instead of doing these useless things, it was better to cultivate properly. This was really putting his energy in the wrong place. Chapter 66-97. When Bai Luchuan heard that City Lord Yang was willing to give a try, he couldn't help but be pleasantly surprised. He knew very well that this matter had always been City Lord Yang's sore point. As long as Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't cure it and knew about it, this matter would inevitably become a thorn in City Lord Yang's side. But at this moment, seeing City Lord Yang's attitude, he felt that things didn't seem to be as he thought. What was going on with this completely different trajectory? Logically speaking, this shouldn't be the case. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were completely relieved after seeing Bai Qingli obtain the illusory form bead. They didn't have to worry about anything else for the time being. At least this thing had fallen into their pockets. With the City Lord's character, even if he was displeased later on, it was impossible for him to take this thing back. Bai Luchuan is really hateful. Fortunately, his scheme didn't succeed, Xiao Hei snickered. Previously, when City Lord Yang took the thing back, she was really disappointed. She didn't expect that the thing would come back after such a short while. Her mood fluctuated greatly. Bai Luchuan went for wool and came back shorn this time. A City Lord narrowed his eyes. His wise gaze swept across everyone on the stage and finally landed on Bai Luchuan's somewhat blank face. Anyone who could become a City Lord must have some skills. Their ability to see through people's hearts was also top-notch. If he didn't understand before, then when City Lord Yang agreed, just now, he clearly felt the change in attitude. I originally thought that this guy had some ability and would have a lot of influence in Cloud City in the future, but recently, he seems to be courting death more and more. Di Xiaofeng's eyes were deep. He had grown up in a family clan since he was young, so he understood this kind of power very well. Bai Luchuan had disappointed the City Lord in order to take revenge for his own grudge. This was simply a stupid move. Personal grudges were only for the sake of venting his anger. However, offending the City Lord meant that his future training would be greatly affected. Perhaps the resources he would enjoy from now on could not be compared to before, but this was extremely good news for them. Not long after, Bai Qingli and Yang Qinshui arrived beside Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. Miss Bailey, I'm afraid I'll have to trouble you with something later, Bai Qingli said with some difficulty. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly, her delicate jade-like face showing some understanding. You mean to treat young Master Yang after the banquet? Looks like you already know. Bai Qingli smiled faintly. Don't worry, nothing will happen. Uncle Yang has always been magnanimous. You are so young, so he definitely won't hold it against you. You can rest assured. Yang Qinxue also said, that's right. I'll be here later, so you don't have to worry about anything else. It doesn't matter, even if it can't be cured. This is a very difficult problem to solve. With you here, I naturally feel at ease, Bailey Hongzhuang said gently. I would like to ask, what kind of illness does young Master Yang have? She had also seen Yang Lingfeng's face. He didn't seem to have any very serious illness, nor did he seem to be poisoned. This made her feel very strange. Even if it was a hidden disease, it shouldn't have made City Lord Yang so angry. There must be something going on, but no one knew what it was. Chapter 6698. After a while, Yang Qinxue said, there's no need to rush. You'll know after you treat him. If you can't, then forget it. Looking at the two of them, Hongzhuang understood that they didn't want to talk about this matter, so he didn't ask any further. After all, he had to help with the treatment after it was over. When the time came, he would naturally understand everything. During the banquet, other than Xiao He and Xiao Bai who were eating happily, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were thinking about the treatment. In this absent-minded situation, the banquet ended very quickly. Not long after, Bai Qingli came to invite Bailey Hongzhuang to the guest room. Miss Bailey, come with me to the treatment. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly and immediately followed behind Bai Qingli. Di Beichen and the others didn't leave either. When Bai Qingli noticed this scene, she couldn't help but say, Young Master Di, why don't you rest in this garden for a while and leave together after Miss Bailey is done? To tell you the truth, Yang Lingfeng's condition has always been a secret. He is, after all, the son of the city lord. If someone were to find out about it, it would inevitably cause some trouble. I hope you can forgive him. Hearing this, Di Beichen and the others understood. Then we'll wait here. Don't worry, I'll take good care of her. Bai Qingli said this to Di Beichen. Following behind Bai Qingli, Bailey Hongzhuang walked all the way into the city lord's mansion. The city lord's mansion was really huge. The place where they were at the banquet was only a corner of it. It wasn't until they arrived at their destination that Bailey Hongzhuang noticed that Bai Luchuan was still here. From the looks of it, he had to see the results today before he gave up. Miss Bailey is here. A cold glint appeared in Bai Luchuan's eyes. He had offended two elders today in order to completely drag down Bailey Hongzhuang. The so-called godly doctor was just an undeserved reputation. Ling Feng's illness has been going on for quite some time. He's seen many doctors, but none of them can cure him. Everyone says that you're the #1 alchemist in Xi'an City. I hope you can cure his illness. That would be great. Bai Luchuan revealed a look of concern. Although his words of concern landed in Bailey Hongzhuang's ears, it clearly didn't mean that. This guy is trying to kill me with excessive praise. Miss Bailey, please come in. Yang Han didn't intend to waste too much time. He opened the door and said. Bailey Hongzhuang bowed slightly and walked into the room. After seeing Bailey Hongzhuang, Yang Lingfeng's face was a little ugly, a bit uneasy. He really didn't want to, but today's matter had come to this point. There had to be an outcome. It was just that his illness, facing such a peerless beauty, it was really difficult to talk about it. After Bailey Hongzhuang noticed Yang Lingfeng's expression, she vaguely had some guesses in her heart. Looking at Yang Lingfeng's masculine appearance, it really didn't seem like it. Young Master Yang, I'm Bailey Hongzhuang. She slowly walked to the side and sat down before continuing. I'm here to treat you. No matter what the situation is, you can tell me. As a doctor, you can rest assured of the most basic confidentiality. You don't have to worry about it. As a doctor, there is no gender distinction. Chapter 6699. Outside the house, Yang Han and the others also had worried looks on their faces. Father, I believe that Ling Feng's problem will definitely be cured. Yang Qinxue naturally understood her father's worries. Didn't Apothecary Way say that Miss Bailey's understanding of medicine is different from many apothecaries? She has a brand new line of thought that even Apothecary Way was shocked. Perhaps, with her help, this situation can really be resolved. Bai Luchuan was worried that no one would help raise Bailey Hongzhuang's status. Now that he heard Yang Qinxue say that, he immediately said with a smile, "Isn't that so? Miss Bailey's attainments in this area have never been simple. I believe in her." Yang Han glanced at Bai Luchuan indifferently. If it wasn't for Bai Ziyuan, he would have long chased this fellow out. Ling Feng's problem indeed needs to be resolved as soon as possible. If a good young man like him were to develop an inferiority complex because of this problem, I'm afraid it will be troublesome in the long run. Bai Ziyuan's voice was slightly heavy. To any man, this problem was very difficult to speak of. However, it would be even worse if he were to hide his illness for fear of treatment. Yang Han sighed. How could he not know this? Stealing face after such a long time, he could clearly sense that Ling Feng was becoming more and more taciturn. In the past, he was a rather sunny kid, but now he only liked to be alone. Previously, a few apothecaries said that as long as we find the medical poison sage, Granny Hua, she can cure Ling Feng's illness. Unfortunately, this Granny Hua has disappeared for many years. No one knows where she went. Even though I've sent many people to inquire, there's no news at all. The medical poison sage, Granny Hua's medical skills and poison skills are top-notch. No one can compare to her. However, her temper is somewhat strange. Even if we know where she is, it's very difficult to ask her for help. However, since a few years ago, she has never appeared in front of the world again. She must have hidden herself from the world. Bai Ziyuan's gaze was complicated. Once such an expert hid herself from the world, it was as difficult as ascending to the heavens to find her. Let's give it a try today. I feel that Miss Bailey's medical skills are indeed very exquisite. Bai Qingli was filled with confidence in Bailey Hongzhuang's medical skills. However, in this aspect, he really didn't believe it. After all, a girl probably wouldn't study this aspect. Jiyu, who loves his wife, Tilde Yindi, when Bailey Hongzhuang found out that Yang Lingfeng really had erectile dysfunction, she couldn't help but feel a little confused. According to her observations, Yang Lingfeng didn't look like it. Young Master Yang, when did this matter begin? Bailey Hongzhuang looked serious. Although she was not good at this as a doctor, she naturally knew a little about it. It started when I went out to train 5 years ago and saw a girl being humiliated. Yang Lingfeng's expression was unsightly. He clearly didn't want to recall the scenes from back then. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang understood a little. This was not a physical illness, but a psychological one. No wonder she could not feel anything from his face. Young Master Yang, is it because this matter has affected you too much that you're acting like this? Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. If that's the reason, then you have to overcome your psychological barrier. Chapter 6700. Are you sure you've really overcome it? Many people hypnotize themselves into thinking that they've overcome it, but in reality, deep down, they're still the same. They can't be shaken at all. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was serious. She once heard from her mother-in-law that psychological problems were the most difficult to solve because external influences were very small. One could only rely on oneself. Yang Lingfeng was originally very repulsed by female pharmacists. Even when his father agreed in front of so many people just now, he did not refuse because he wanted to save his father's face. But at this moment, looking at the serious and meticulous manner of the woman in front of him, the trace of hostility in his heart dissipated. Because from the beginning to the end, she did not show the slightest bit of ridicule. On the contrary, she had been very carefully thinking about the problem. I'm sure I've overcome it. Yang Lingfeng nodded. When I went out for training, it was my first time out. Usually, I've always been cultivating in the city lord's manor, so I've never experienced such a scene. So I was deeply shocked and somewhat depressed. But all these years, I've been exposed to a lot of things when I went out for training. I understand the cruelty between cultivators. Although this kind of thing doesn't happen often, many people might have experienced it before. I've deliberately experienced a lot of things because of this problem, My mentality also went from being nervous at the beginning to being calm later on. Listening to the man's steady narration, Bailey Hongzhuang also understood. Everything he said did not seem to be forcing himself. Instead, it was from the bottom of his heart that he had gradually adapted to all of this. Perhaps he had not completely let go of that matter, but it was already a lot better. Logically speaking, if you're gradually getting better, you should show it physiologically. Bailey Hongzhuang pondered. Yang Lingfeng smiled faintly. All these years, many pharmacists have treated me. Regarding this problem, they also couldn't understand it. Miss, if you don't understand, you don't have to worry. Maybe I haven't completely overcome it. Looking at the man's faint smile, Bailey Hongzhuang's impression of him changed. Originally, she only thought of him as a person with a strange temperament and did not like to talk much. But when he smiled, it was filled with a kind of spring breeze-like warmth. Thinking about it, before this incident, he must have been an optimistic and cheerful person. Bailey Hongzhuang carefully checked his pulse. His pulse was calm and steady, and it didn't seem like there was any problem. She had been a doctor for so long, but it was rare for her to encounter such a problem where she could not find any clues. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang was about to withdraw her hand and confirm that it was a psychological problem, there was suddenly an abnormal beat in her steady pulse. Noticing this, her expression couldn't help but change slightly for a moment, and the hand that was about to withdraw tightened again. When Yang Lingfeng saw the change in Bailey Hongzhuang's actions, he was also a little surprised. He maintained his original position and did not move. As time passed, Bailey Hongzhuang kept feeling Yang Lingfeng's pulse. At that moment, she had clearly noticed an abnormal heartbeat, but when she continued to take his pulse, it disappeared again. It was as if her previous discovery was simply an illusion. However, she was certain that that moment was not an illusion. It truly existed. Chapter 6701. Miss Bailey, what are you? Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang had not moved an inch, Yang Lingfeng felt that the atmosphere was a little awkward and could not help but ask. However, Bailey Hongzhuang only shook her head slightly, indicating that he should not speak. This minute change was not obvious and needed to be carefully observed. Yang Lingfeng also kept his mouth shut, but his heart was filled with anticipation. Could it be that she had discovered something? After waiting for a while, Bailey Hongzhuang finally felt that abnormal pulse, and her eyes lit up. She seemed to have discovered a problem. If it wasn't for the fact that she happened to run into this opportunity, she might have really missed it. This pulse was too subtle and would not have been discovered if one did not pay attention. Master Yang, 5 years ago, other than the scene that you saw with your own eyes, did anything else happen? Hearing this question, Yang Lingfeng's eyes flashed with a trace of suspicion. When this happened that year, I was also poisoned, but after Brother Qing Li and the others arrived, my poison was quickly cured. After that, nothing else happened in the years of training. Did you discover something? You were poisoned? Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes narrowed. What kind of poison was it? That poison was very strange. According to the person who poisoned me, this poison was very powerful. However, although I was poisoned, it did not take much effort to cure the poison, so I always thought that he was just talking nonsense and was just bluffing. Yang Lingfeng's face was calm, obviously disdainful of the man's words. This poison, I'm afraid there's indeed something strange about it. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyebrows revealed a trace of thought. She didn't think about it before, so she didn't pay too much attention to it. At this moment, after discovering this clue, she carefully studied it and found the problem. Yang Lingfeng's expression changed. You're saying that the reason why I am like this is not because of psychological problem, but because of the poison? None of the pharmacists had ever mentioned this before, and this thought shocked him greatly. If it was really because of the poison, then as long as the poison was cured, would he be able to recover? This problem has been in your body for a full 5 years, but it hasn't been discovered. Either the poison itself isn't very destructive, but the other party clearly said that this poison isn't simple, so it's very likely that this poison is a slow-acting poison. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression became serious. If this was the case, then everything had become complicated. This slow-acting poison often did not seem like much in the short term, but after a long time, it would penetrate deep into the internal organs and could cause death. Although Yang Lingfeng was not a pharmacist, he had seen many pharmacists over the years and had some understanding of the situation. Even if Bailey Hongzhuang did not say it, he knew the power of this slow-acting poison. All these years, this slow-acting poison for such a long time, Yang Lingfeng still couldn't believe it. Slow-acting poisons did exist, but it was rare to see one that could last for such a long time. Chapter 6702. Upon hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Yang Lingfeng's expression changed abruptly, as if he had recalled something. Seeing the change in the man's expression, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but ask, "Have you recalled something?" Back then, I had said that the poison was very serious, and that ordinary antidote pills would not have any effect at all. Therefore, the antidote pills that they had brought out were of extremely high quality. It was said that this antidote pill seemed to be the antidote pill that the saint of medicine and poison, Granny Hua, had once sold. My father and the others had bought it at a high price. Granny Hua. Bailey Hongzhuang was a little surprised. She had not expected to hear Granny Hua's name again today. It seemed that Granny Hua's name was really resounding. Yang Lingfeng nodded slightly. Granny Hua's medical and poison skills can be said to be top-notch. Don't look at how Medicine Master Wei and the others' medical skills are not bad. They can't be compared to Granny Hua at all. All along, the pills that Granny Hua refined were hard to come by. However, Granny Hua had not appeared for a long time. Everyone said that as long as we could find Granny Hua, my problem would be easily solved. It's a pity that Granny Hua is nowhere to be found now. Bailey Hongzhuang heard this, and the corners of her lips curled up slightly. It was true that they could not find Granny Hua now. However, the person in front of them was Granny Hua's disciple, Flourishing Age's favorite concubine. The demonic emperor takes advantage. Are you sure that other than some problems in this area, you don't feel any other discomfort? Bailey Hongzhuang confirmed once again. She had to understand the situation clearly before she could prescribe the right medicine. Yang Lingfeng nodded affirmatively. That's right. I'll take some of your blood first and study it when we get back. All right. The blood was bright red, and they could not see any problems. This was also within their expectations. It was only when Bailey Hongzhuang and Yang Lingfeng walked out of the room together that everyone came forward to welcome them. Miss Bailey, how was the diagnosis and treatment this time? Is there a way to treat Lingfeng's condition? Facing everyone's concerned gaze, Bailey Hongzhuang slowly said, I need to go back and study it before I tell you. Hearing this, everyone frowned. Yang Lingfeng was here. Was he going to study? Yang Han was a little disappointed. It seemed that Bailey Hongzhuang was unable to diagnose and treat him, so she made such an excuse. When she returned, would they still pursue the matter? Medical Garden, there was a sneer in the depths of Bai Liuchuan's eyes. He knew that Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't tell it all. She was just deliberately mystifying things. I thought that Miss Bailey's medical skills were outstanding and that she would definitely have a solution. I didn't expect that I would disappoint Uncle Yang. I'm really sorry. Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at Bai Liuchuan indifferently, but didn't say anything. You can't casually spread this matter. You must keep it a secret. Otherwise, once this news is known by others, Bai Liuchuan's expression turned sinister. He had long planned that after the woman returned, he would send people to spread the news near her residence. Once such a matter was spread, City Lord Yang and company would definitely lose face. When the time came, they would vent their anger on Bailey Hongzhuang. Then, don't worry. A doctor is benevolent. I definitely won't tell anyone. Chapter 6703. Bai Liuchuan looked at Yang Lingfeng in astonishment. He had only gone in for treatment, but his attitude had immediately changed. If he didn't know that Yang Lingfeng was powerless, he would have thought that something had happened. This change was too fast. That's right. It's not like Miss Bailey owes us anything. She's willing to help treat us, so we should thank her properly. Yang Qinxue couldn't stand it any longer. Indeed, she didn't know what conflict there was between Bai Liuchuan and Bailey Hongzhuang, but it was too much for a man to target a woman. Bai Luchuan couldn't help but feel anxious when he saw everyone glaring at him. Immediately, he resented Bailey Hongzhuang even more. That's not what I meant. I'm just worried that this news will affect Ling Feng if it gets out. Don't worry. I believe in Miss Bailey's character. Yang Lingfeng glanced at Bai Luchuan. If this news really gets out, it must be someone else's doing. Bai Luchuan's heart palpitated. Yang Lingfeng was clearly referring to him. Lingfeng, I'm doing this for you. How can you target me like this? Yang Lingfeng couldn't be bothered. Miss Bailey's medical skills are indeed superb. She discovered that my illness might not be as simple as a psychological problem. The moment that was said, everyone present was taken aback. Yang Han took a few steps forward. Lingfeng, what do you mean? Upon seeing this, Yang Lingfeng looked apologetically at Bailey Hongzhuang. He understood her thoughts. She wanted to wait until she was certain before telling everyone to prevent them from having unnecessary expectations. However, Bai Luchuan was too much. He couldn't stand it any longer. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled slightly, indicating that she wasn't unhappy. Miss Bailey said that the reason why I'm like this might be because there's still poison in my body. Yang Han turned his head when he heard that. Miss, what do you mean? When I was taking young Master Yang's pulse, I realized that his pulse would fluctuate slightly every once in a while. This is a hidden problem. However, I've already taken the antidote back then, and it's been so long. I need some time to be sure. Yang Han's expression changed as he looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a hint of surprise. He didn't know that there was such a thing. If that was the case, then everything would be solved as long as the poison was removed. Then I'll have to trouble Miss Bailey. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. I'll do my best. Bai Ziwan looked at Apothecary Wei and said, Apothecary Wei, did you notice this when you took Ling Feng's pulse? Apothecary Wei shook his head slightly. This old man is puzzled. I didn't notice it when I took your pulse earlier. Miss Bailey, can you tell me how you noticed it? Ever since their conversation, Apothecary Wei knew that Bailey Hongzhuang wasn't someone who liked to play to the gallery. Since what she said was true, why didn't he notice it when he was taking her pulse? Medicine Master Wei, young Master Yang's abnormality can only be detected once every 10 minutes. It's normal that you didn't notice it when you were taking his pulse. If I hadn't discovered it by chance, I definitely wouldn't have known. Why don't you give it a try now? Chapter 6704. Upon hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's suggestion, Apothecary Wei's interest was piqued. He turned to look at Yang Lingfeng. Young Master Yang, I wonder. Yang Lingfeng smiled and said, Apothecary Wei, feel free to take a look. Even though Bailey Hongzhuang was so young and didn't seem to be very convincing, he didn't know why he felt that there was no problem with Bailey Hongzhuang's judgment. As long as it wasn't a problem with his body, he felt much better. After Apothecary Wei took the pulse, he realized that the situation was the same as what he had discovered previously. However, after knowing that it would take 10 minutes, he patiently listened carefully. Yang Qinxue and the others also understood that this wasn't the time to make a ruckus. They all stood silently to the side, waiting for the diagnosis results. A moment later, Apothecary Wei's expression suddenly changed. There was a hint of surprise between his brows. Upon seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang understood that Apothecary Wei must have discovered the problem. So that's how it is. I've taken the pulse many times, but I've never encountered it. It's fate that you encountered it. Apothecary Wei retracted his hand and looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in amazement. Apothecary Wei, does that mean that everything Miss Bailey said is true? Apothecary Wei nodded slightly. That's right. There are indeed some problems in young Master Yang's body. It's very possible that the remaining poison hasn't been cleared. Miss Bailey's luck is really good. She actually happened to encounter it. She's really amazing. Bai Luchuan was about to die from anger. Bailey Hongzhuang's luck was actually so good. She could discover a problem that so many people hadn't discovered. Could there be anything more exaggerated? Seeing that Bai Luchuan attributed all of this to luck, Apothecary Wei retorted, This isn't luck. It's because little friend Bailey's knowledge is stable. This slight change isn't obvious. If she wasn't careful enough, she definitely wouldn't have discovered it. This old man's diagnosis was under the premise that little friend Bailey reminded me. This slight difference is really easy to overlook. Bai Ziyuan and the others were secretly surprised by Apothecary Wei's praise. Even though Apothecary Wei admired Bailey Hongzhuang a lot, he wouldn't deliberately say such things just to praise her. Therefore, there was only one reason left. Bailey Hongzhuang was truly talented. Bai Ziyuan and Yang Han were very clear that Bailey Hongzhuang was the only one who was able to detect it, even though so many pharmacists were unable to do so. This was her strength. Miss Bailey really lives up to your reputation. At this moment, Yang Han no longer had any objections. He also understood why Bai Ziyuan and the others were so polite to Bailey Hongzhuang. Such a lady was truly admirable. City Lord Yang is too kind. Bailey Hongzhuang cupped her fists. If it really is a remnant poison, as long as we can resolve it, young Master Yang's illness will be cured. Yang Qinxue and the others were pleasantly surprised. Sorry to trouble you. If Miss Bailey is able to cure Ling Feng, we will definitely do our best regardless of the reward. Yang Han also spoke. Hearing that, Bailey Hongzhuang bowed with a smile. She didn't refute. Bai Ziyuan could tell that every city lord was quite wealthy. They hadn't been in the chaotic immortal realm for long, so they naturally wouldn't complain about having too many resources. It was only right to do things with money. Chapter 6705. Master has been gone for so long, but she still hasn't come back. What is she doing? Xiaohei wandered on the spot. She wanted to go with her master, but she didn't expect to be despised for being noisy, so she could only stay here. Di Xiaofeng was also a little worried. Hongzhuang usually treats patients very quickly, but she took so long this time. Could it be that Bai Luchuan took the opportunity to cause trouble again? I think we can't just sit here and wait for death. Why don't we go and take a look? Zhong Limu couldn't hold it in anymore. At this moment, familiar footsteps gradually came from not far away. Hongzhuang is here. Di Beichen's lips curled up slightly. They were together day and night, so he could tell just by listening to the sound of footsteps. Bailey Hongzhuang walked closer and found that everyone was gathered together. It was obvious that they didn't have the slightest intention of admiring the scenery. Are you anxious from waiting? You're finally back. Di Beichun smiled faintly. If you didn't come back, everyone was prepared to rush in and bring you out. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang burst out laughing. It's not that exaggerated. What he said is true. Mo Yunjue said. Don't worry, it's nothing. It's just that young Master Yang's illness is a little special, so it took a little more time. Bailey Hongzhuang looked indifferent. Even if Bai Luchuan wants to deal with me, I have a lot of helpers. I think he will inevitably be punished when he goes back today. This guy is really troublesome. We should keep him in confinement to prevent him from harming others. Di Xiaofeng said. Let's go. Let's go back. Bailey Hongzhuang took 2 steps forward, and the others quickly followed. Although everyone was curious about Yang Lingfeng's illness, no one asked. Bai Qingli's attitude was already very clear. Asking would only make things difficult for Hongzhuang. On the other hand, Bailey Hongzhuang knew that everyone was curious, especially Gong Jun. From time to time, he would look at her with a curious expression. According to my judgment, young Master Yang should have been poisoned a few years ago, and the residual poison is still lingering in his body. Hearing this, Gong Jun also understood. So that's how it is. Looking at his mysterious appearance, I thought he had some incurable disease. He is the city lord's son. Naturally, we have to keep his illness a secret. Otherwise, wouldn't it be terrible if someone uses it to deal with him? Di Beichen chuckled. Gong Jun nodded slightly. Indeed, who asked him to be of such a high status? We have to be on our guard at all times. Bailey Hongzhuang took out the illusory form bead. When she came back earlier, Bai Qingli had already given it to her. Upon seeing the illusion form bead, Xiaohei and Xiao Bai quickly came over, their faces filled with excitement. Illusion form bead. Their 2 claws almost fell on Bailey Hongzhuang's hand at the same time. She didn't stop them. In any case, this was meant for them. City Lord Yang only has 1 illusion form bead, so I'm afraid one of you will have to wait for a while. It is said that although this illusion form bead doesn't appear very often, it is not a rare treasure. As long as we spend some time looking for it, we will be able to find it. Bailey Hongzhuang didn't want to see the two little ones disappointed. In fact, being able to find an illusion-form bead in such a short time was already very difficult. Chapter 6706. Debachin looked at the two little fellows tangled up and chuckled. I'll leave this illusion-form bead to you two to decide. Our decision is ultimately unfair. Bailey Hongzhuang's thoughts were the same. Little Black and Little White had been together since they first appeared. She didn't know how many years it had been. Although the two little fellows liked to bicker, their relationship had always been good. There was no need to worry that they would fight when the illusion-form bead was in their hands. Thank you, Master, the two little fellows said together. Although Di Xiaofeng and the others didn't say anything from their expressions, one could tell that they were quite curious about how the two little fellows would split the bead. Presumably, they would know when they came back in a few days. After returning, Bailey Hongzhuang began to study Yang Lingfeng's illness. She was very clear about the effects of her mother-in-law's detoxification pill. Ordinary poisons, even the most powerful ones, could be cured as long as one used her mother-in-law's detoxification pill. However, this poison could still retain a trace of toxicity. It was obvious that it wasn't simple. However, from Yang Lingfeng's words, she didn't know who made this poison. Presumably, this person's attainments in the art of poison were not simple. Which star did the male god come from? It seems that my wife is going to work hard on this matter. Debachin poured a cup of tea and placed it beside Bailey Hongzhuang. This matter was set up by Bai Luchuan. The city lord and the others have already seen through it. Bailey Hongzhuang looked up with a bright smile on her beautiful face. Originally, I didn't take it to heart. After all, this matter has nothing to do with us. However, after I met Yang Lingfeng, I realized that he's not bad. If I can cure him, it'll be great. With Yang Lingfeng's age, this kind of problem must be extremely uncomfortable. Previously, it was fine, but seeing him protect her, she felt that he was much more pleasing to the eye. Debachin nodded slightly. As long as you're happy, don't tire yourself out. Of course, there's another important reason why I'm doing this. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows. Illusion form bead? City Lord Yang obtained an illusory form bead. Perhaps I can ask him where he obtained the illusory form bead, or if he knows of any other places. Bailey Hongzhuang didn't want the two little guys to be too entangled. It would be best if they could find them as soon as possible. Pantheon, protect Earth. As long as we can get some clues, we will have a direction. If there really isn't anything, then City Lord Yang will not treat us unfairly. The City Lord's family has always been very rich. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's mischievous and crafty appearance, Debachin couldn't help but chuckle. Now that you've known Gong Jun for a long time, you've also become somewhat shrewd. Isn't that good? Bailey Hongzhuang tilted her head and asked. Debachin reached out and touched her head. He shook his head and said, No, my wife is naturally the best. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. Today, I heard that Granny's reputation in the realm of chaotic immortals is so resounding. The elixirs she refined are sold at sky-high prices. Thinking about it, we almost ate Granny's elixirs like jelly beans in the abandoned immortal forest. If these people knew, I'm afraid they would go crazy. Granny has always been very generous to us. As Debachin spoke, his gaze turned to the thing in Bailey Hongzhuang's hand and said, Could it be that Yang Lingfeng's illness is related to Granny? Chapter 6707. We all know how effective Granny's detoxification pill is, but the poison was not completely neutralized even after taking the detoxification pill. I'm curious, so I want to find out. Hearing this, Debachin finally understood. Hongzhuang was most concerned about this. Others may not know, but he knew how important Granny was to Hongzhuang. You don't have to worry about me. Rest well. Bailey Hongzhuang pulled Debachin's hand and shook it. Yang Lingfeng has been poisoned for 5 years. There's no need to rush. Debachin nodded. All right, I won't disturb you any further. Bailey Hongzhuang carefully checked Yang Lingfeng's blood. The residual poison was not obvious, so it would be difficult to find any clues. She was not worried. If it was so easy to find out, then Yang Lingfeng would have been poisoned for so many years. Compared to others, she knew the recipe for Granny Hua's detoxification pill very well, so it would be easier for her to study it. Back in the abandoned immortal forest, she had asked Granny what kind of poison her detoxification pill could not neutralize. Granny's answer was that other than the poison she created, all other poisons could not be neutralized. Perhaps other people would be too arrogant if they said such words, but she knew that Granny had absolute confidence in qualifications. Now, such a poison had appeared. Since it was a very powerful poison, could it be a poison refined by Granny? If it wasn't, then wouldn't it mean that there was a very powerful poison master? It was a pity that Granny was not here. Otherwise, she would have found out very quickly. She could only study it slowly. She believed that as long as she spent more time, she would be able to find out. If there really was such a powerful poison master, then she would have to tell Granny about it in the future. While Bailey Hongzhuang was focused on her research, Medicine Master Wei was also focused on his research. Yang Han and the others wanted to see how Medicine Master Wei planned to study it. They were very curious about the results. However, Medicine Master Wei only said that he was going to close the door and study it carefully, then turn them away. Looks like Apothecary Wei is serious this time. Bai Ziyuan smiled faintly. Apothecary Wei had been in the City Lord's mansion for many years, so he knew his personality very well. Once there was such a reaction, it meant that he really wanted to study it properly. He remembered that there was a time when he stayed at home for 3 whole months before coming out. Although Lady Bailey is young, she is truly formidable. So many alchemists were unable to discover it, but she was able to. If Ling Feng's problem can really be solved, then we must thank her properly. Yang Qinxue was full of anticipation. In the past 5 years, they had met many pharmacists, but none of them could find solution. This was the first time they were so close to success. Brother Bai, I was right to come to your birthday celebration. Yang Han was in extremely good mood. Even if he couldn't solve it for the time being, he still had to find the root cause. Then, there was a possibility of a cure. It was much better than working hard in other areas without knowing the cause. Bai Ziyuan chuckled. Your illusory form bead is worth it, if not for my calligraphy and painting. Chapter 6708. Mayor Yang and his family stayed in Shiyun City for the time being. After seeing that Medicine Master Wei had gone into seclusion for research, they could roughly guess that Bailey Hongzhuang was doing the same. Yang Lingfeng and Yang Qinxue couldn't help but want to wander around Bailey Hongzhuang's residence. However, every time they were about to reach it, they stopped in their tracks, afraid that their rash appearance would disturb Hongzhuang's progress. When Gong Jun came out of the courtyard and saw the two hesitating, he couldn't help but ask in surprise, Are the two of you looking for Madam? Is Miss Bailey very busy right now? Yang Qinxue asked. Gong Jun nodded. Madam has been researching ever since she returned from the City Lord's birthday celebration. I wanted just now to see my boss. Madam seems to have been locked in her room the whole time. Hearing this, Yang Qinxue and Yang Lingfeng looked at each other and understood. In that case, we won't disturb her, Yang Lingfeng said. Gong Jun smiled slightly. Don't worry, Madam's medical skills have always been very good. Since she has put in so much effort to research, she will definitely find a solution. We also believe in her, Tang Dynasty of North America said. Yang Lingfeng smiled. Ever since he met Bailey Hongzhuang, he understood that she was serious. She wasn't someone who coveted fame, but real talent. You don't know, but the pills refined by Madame have always been the most popular. Compared to pills of the same grade, the effects of her pills are much better than ordinary pills. Gong Jun's face was full of pride. Now that the pills refined by Madame had completely become the signature of Xianbao Pavilion, he didn't sell them casually, but limited them. At first, he was a little worried that this might affect Xianbao Pavilion's business, but now it seemed that there was no impact at all. On the contrary, business was getting better and better. However, Yang Qinxue and Yang Lingfeng were shocked after hearing this. Is what you said true? Many people in the city know about this. How can it be false? Gong Jun smiled and waved his hand. My Immortal Treasure Pavilion has never been a match for the 10,000 Treasures Pavilion, but since Madam and Boss came out, business has been getting better and better. Why don't we go take a look at your immortal treasure pavilion? Yang Qingqiu's interest was piqued. Rebirth. I'm on my OG sure. Gong Ju nodded and smiled. If Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were here, they would know what Gong Jun was up to once they saw his smile. I heard that the medicinal pills refined by Granny Hua in the past were much better than those refined by ordinary alchemists. I didn't expect Miss Bailey to be able to achieve this. It's really amazing. Yang Lingfeng sighed. Even though he hadn't seen it yet, he knew that Gong Jun wouldn't lie about such things. No wonder she was able to discover your problem. That's why she's so good, Yang Qingqiu praised. I don't seem to have seen by Lu Chuan recently. Gong Jun pretended to ask casually. A trace of disgust appeared in Yang Qingqiu's eyes. That guy went overboard at the birthday banquet. Later on, he targeted me everywhere. Now he's being grounded. I don't think he'll be out for a while. Chapter 6709. Wait for Bai Lu Chuan to figure it out. Gong Jun chuckled. I'm afraid he won't be able to figure it out for the rest of his life. Hearing the mockery in Gong Jun's words, the two didn't mind at all. After this incident, their good impression of Bai Lu Chuan had been completely destroyed. When the three arrived, they found that the Immortal Treasure Pavilion was indeed as busy as a marketplace. It looked very lively. In contrast, the business of the Myriad Treasures Pavilion opposite them was rather quiet. Pills, runes, and formations were all dominated by the Immortal Treasure Pavilion. After all, the Myriad Treasures Pavilion was like a starving camel that was still bigger than a horse. They still had the advantage in terms of pill furnaces and weapons. The standard of the refiners in Shiyun City couldn't compare to the Myriad Treasures Pavilion. Now, they could only rely on this aspect to maintain their business. Brother Gong, your Immortal Treasure Pavilion is really amazing. This is the first time I've seen someone open their own shop and actually snatch the business of the Myriad Treasures Pavilion. It's really a first. Yang Lingfeng was surprised. The Myriad Treasures Pavilion also existed in Qingyang City, but in terms of business, the other shops couldn't compare at all. Gong Jun chuckled. It's all because of Boss and Madam. When I opened this shop previously, business was half dead. Look around and see if there's anything you like. I'll give it to you. That won't do. Since we're doing business, how can we give it to you? Yang Lingfeng immediately refused. We're all friends. There's no need to be so polite, Gong Jun said. Yang Qingqiu waved her hand. If you're willing to let us buy it, then we'll take a look. If you insist on giving it to us, then we'll have to leave. Seeing this, Gong Jun looked troubled. He could only helplessly say, all right, I'll give you a discount. That should be fine, right? Haha, all right. When the people in the Immortal Treasure Pavilion saw Yang Qingqiu and Yang Lingfeng, surprise appeared in their eyes. Aren't they the children of the Qingyang City Lord? I didn't expect them to have such a good relationship with the shopkeeper of the Immortal Treasure Pavilion. It seems that the Immortal Treasure Pavilion's background isn't simple. Although the Myriad Treasures Pavilion is backed by the Immortal Region's Myriad Treasures Pavilion, in this city, their influence can't compare to the Immortal Treasure Pavilion. The items from the Immortal Treasure Pavilion are not bad. With such a background, there is no need to worry about them in the future. Gong Jun smiled as he accompanied Yang Lingfeng and Yang Lingfeng in their selection. Listening to the discussions around them, he felt a burst of happiness in his heart. He had invited Yang Lingfeng and Yang Lingfeng for this purpose, and now it seemed that the effect was excellent. At this moment, Bai Qingli also appeared in the Myriad Treasure Pavilion. In an instant, the gazes of everyone in the store changed. No matter what, Qingyang City was still a neighboring city, but Bai Qingli was the son of the city lord. At this moment, they were all gathered here. How could this be? So you're here. I went out and looked around, but didn't see you. If I didn't happen to hear someone talking about you, I wouldn't have been able to find you. Bai Qingli smiled. Yang Qingqiu smiled. We heard that Miss Bailey's pills are not simple, so we wanted to come and see for ourselves. I'm ashamed to say this. Although I've long heard of this name, I've never seen it before. Since we're here today, why don't we give it a try? Bai Qingli's interest was also piqued. Before he met Bailey Hongzhuang, he had heard of this rumor and felt that it was too exaggerated. Now that he thought about it, it was very likely that this was the truth. Chapter 6710. Bailey Hongzhuang was concentrating on her research in the room. Gong Jun had also sent over quite a few medicinal herbs for her to experiment with. It had to be said that this poison was indeed more complicated than she had imagined. Over the past few days, she had already tried many different scenarios, but none of them matched. Although the difficulty was high, the more it was so, the more it piqued Bailey Hongzhuang's interest. She did not believe that she would not be able to figure it out. Di Beichun was cultivating in the room. Other than forcing Hongzhuang to rest when it was time to rest, he usually let her do as she pleased. Speaking of which, it was strange. After Xiao He and Xiao Bai obtained the illusory form pearl, they claimed that they wanted to go into closed-door cultivation. After closing the door, they hid in the room next door. For the past few days, these two little fellows had also been in closed-door cultivation. No one knew what they were up to. However, the illusory form pearl was a great supplement for monstrous beasts. There was no need to worry about any harm, so he did not pay too much attention to it. One day, two screams suddenly came from the room next door. Hearing this, Di Beichun immediately stood up and looked at the room next door. Could it be that Xiao He and Xiao Bai had transformed into human form? Even Bailey Hongzhuang, who was concentrating on her research, quickly came over after hearing the commotion. Her fair face was filled with surprise. What's going on? Maybe Xiao He and Xiao Bai have found something. Di Beichun said. The two of them looked at each other, and a trace of curiosity rose in their hearts. These two little fellows had always been noisy. They wondered what they looked like now. Come, let's go take a look. Di Beichun pulled Bailey Hongzhuang's hand and walked towards the room next door. Just as the two of them were about to push open the door and enter, the two little fellows' nervous voices came from inside. Don't come in first. Hearing this, the two of them stopped abruptly at the door and asked curiously, What's wrong with you two? Have you successfully transformed into human form? A moment later, the door was opened. However, after opening the door, Bailey Hongzhuang and Xiao still saw Xiao He and Xiao Bai in their original appearances. There was still a trace of panic on their faces. What's wrong with you? No, nothing. The two beasts hurriedly drew, but their expressions clearly showed that they had a guilty conscience. Which one of you took the illusion form bead? Di Beichun looked at the two little fellows. Judging from their appearance, the two little fellows were exactly the same. He couldn't tell what was different about them, so he couldn't tell who had eaten them. Master, don't get involved in this matter. Xiao He said with a smile. We've already decided that before we find the other illusory form bead, we'll keep appearing in this state, right? Xiao Bai? Xiao Bai nodded repeatedly. That's right, this is the best. Faced with the two little fellows' explanation, Bailey Hongzhuang had a suspicious look on her face. She didn't believe what they said at all. If that's really the case, you can keep one illusion form bead and use it together when you find the second one. But now, you won't have the same problem as Xiao Xuanzi, right? Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly asked. As soon as she said this, Xiao He and Xiao Bai couldn't help but cough in fright. They waved their hands and said, No, you've been with me for so many years. What's there to be embarrassed about? Chapter 6711. Bailey Hongzhuang was all smiles. Don't be so secretive. You have to show it to us. Master, it's better if you don't. Are you going to show it to us or not? Bailey Hongzhuang narrowed her eyes, and her tone was threatening and enticing. I'll reward you with good food tonight. Xiao He and Xiao Bai looked conflicted. After a long while, they finally said slowly, All right, then. In the next moment, under their expectant gazes, Xiao He transformed. However, when the two of them saw her transformed appearance, they couldn't help but be stunned. Their eyes were filled with shock, because the Xiao He in front of them didn't transform into a stunning beauty or a distinguished scholar. Instead, she was a delicate little girl. For a moment, Bailey Hongzhuang wondered if she had seen wrongly. However, after checking again and again, she was sure that she hadn't seen wrongly. However, Yin Che and Xiao Xuanzi hadn't grown up as long as Xiao He. They had already become adults. Xiao He had lived for so many years, but after transforming, she was still a child. It was truly shocking. Perhaps This is the difference between white light spirits? Bailey Hongzhuang sank into deep thought. Then, a smile bloomed on her face again. She reached out and pinched Xiao Hei's cheeks. This little girl is really good looking. Her little face is so tender. You can even squeeze water out of it. Xiao Hei blushed. She pursed her lips and said, "Master, don't tease me. I'm telling the truth. Your appearance is indeed exquisite and beautiful." Bailey Hongzhuang praised from the bottom of her heart. There were many good-looking little girls, but Xiao Hei's transformed appearance was the most beautiful one she had ever seen. Such an adorable appearance that seemed to be carved from jade could melt anyone's heart. At first, I couldn't quite imagine what you would look like after transforming. But now, it seems that you are indeed very suitable. She turned to look at Xiao Bai. If we find the other illusory form orb, Xiao Bai should become a cute little boy. Di Baichen nodded slightly. That should be the case. Just as the two of them were talking, Little White suddenly changed, turning into a jade-like little boy. Seeing this, the two of them were stunned. What was going on? There was only one illusory form orb, but the two little fellows had transformed. What's going on? Di Baichen realized that something was wrong and asked. Xiao Hei and Xiao Bai, we split the illusory form orb into two halves. Bailey Hongzhuang finally understood. No wonder the two little guys had turned into children. It turned out that the amount of illusory form beads wasn't enough. If an entire illusory form orb could allow them to transform into an adult, then after eating only half of it, they could only transform into a child. You two are really bold. One illusory form orb is only enough for one demonic beast. You two actually decided to split it. Fortunately, there were no problems. Otherwise, it would be terrible. Xiao Hei and Xiao Bai lowered their heads and said helplessly, "We also didn't expect this to happen. It's just that one illusory form orb is really too difficult to split." Forget it. Isn't it good that you two are like this? Although you look a little younger, at least you've transformed into a human. Once we find the other illusory form orb, you two can consume the other half. I think this problem will be solved. Chapter 67:12. Seeing that their master did not blame them, Xiao Hei and Xiao Bai finally relaxed and returned to their original playful selves. "Thank you, master." Di Baichen reached out and picked up Xiao Bai, then turned to look at Bailey Hongzhuang. "If we bring these adorable little dolls back, grandmother and the rest will definitely like them very much." Bailey Hongzhuang also picked up Xiao Hei. These two little dolls, who looked only 3 years old, were indeed very good-looking. The more one looked at them, the more one liked them. However, when she heard Di Baichen's words, she understood what he meant. Grandmother had always hoped that they would have a child soon. However, this kind of thing also depended on fate. If Yin Che and Xiao Xuanzi see you like this, they will definitely find it very interesting. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled up slightly. These little fellows used to be together all day long. Ever since Yin Che and the rest had transformed, they had begun to look forward to Xiao Hei and Xiao Bai. Their reactions would probably be even more intense than theirs when they saw this scene. As soon as she said this, Xiao Hei and Xiao Bai's expressions instantly changed. No, we can't let them see this. If they were seen like this, they would recall how they used to flaunt their seniority. Will they still have any face left? Since they're already here, let's just take things as they come. They won't mind. Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled. They all know about the illusory form pearl. Even if we intentionally hide it, don't tell me they won't be able to see through it? Xiao Hei and Xiao Bai instantly sighed. You'll have to pay for what you've done. What did it feel like to go out with a little doll in your arms? When Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen brought Xiao Hei and Xiao Bai out the door, everyone turned their heads. Originally, Di Baichen and Li Du were already very attractive. In addition, these two little dolls were so cute that everyone couldn't help but take a few more glances at them. Look, there's actually such a pretty little doll. This is the first time I've seen such a cute little doll. Could they be Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen's children? Isn't this too beautiful? It's all because of their good genes and good-looking parents. That's why their children are so outstanding. Everyone sighed one after another. This family was really too eye-catching when they went out. Xiao Hei wrapped her arms around Bailey Hongzhuang's neck. Although she was treated as her master's child, she had to admit that it was a different feeling to go out like this. Master, you and the male master have to work harder and give birth to a baby soon. This way, Xiao Bai and I can take care of our younger siblings together, right? Bailey Hongzhuang pinched Xiao Hei's cheeks. Then we'll have to look forward to finding the illusion form pearl soon. Otherwise, if we get pregnant, won't others say that I'm too good at giving birth? Going out with 3 children. That scene was indeed a little hard to imagine. Xiao Hei's expression stiffened. It's okay, your husband doesn't mind. Di Beichen's lips curled up slightly. His voice was calm and gentle. Bailey Hongzhuang's face reddened. You don't mind, but I do. I believe that no matter if it's grandmother or maternal grandmother, they won't mind. Bailey Hongzhuang chose to keep quiet. She had never been able to win against Di Beichen on this kind of issue. However, the scene of carrying Xiao Hei and Xiao Bai out together made her look forward to it. If she really had a child with Beichen, she wondered who this child would look like. Chapter 67:13. When Bailey Hongzhuang and the others arrived at the restaurant, they immediately attracted the attention of many people. Many ladies' eyes softened when they saw the 2 adorable little children. Such adorable children. I really want to hug them. Xiao Hei and Xiao Bai could feel the constant stares coming from all around them. This was the first time they realized how terrifying the stares of humans could be. They could not wait to pack them up and bring them home. When you're outside, you can't run away with strangers when you meet them. You must follow them closely, okay? Bailey Hongzhuang also found this scene extremely amusing. She reached out and patted Xiao Hei's head. After we're done eating, I'll bring you to have some new clothes made. The 2 little ones were simply too adorable. They would definitely look even better in some new clothes. Xiao Hei looked at her master helplessly. Sure enough, women change at times like this. You weren't like this in the past. Di Beichen looked at Bailey Hongzhuang's playfulness and allowed her to do as she pleased. It would be nice for her to experience what it was like to be a mother as soon as possible. That's right. Gong Jun knows of a cloth clothing store that's excellent. Can you ask him where the store is? Bailey Hongzhuang turned to look at Di Beichen. Everyone had said that the clothes that Gong Jun had made for them were not bad. Even she was very satisfied with them. Di Beichen smiled faintly. Don't worry, I've already informed Gong Jun that he's coming. Xiao Hei and Xiao Bai could not help but panic when they heard that Gong Jun was coming. They were not mentally prepared for this. This won't do. We have to hide quickly. The 2 little ones were contemplating whether they should revert back to their original appearances in front of everyone. However, wouldn't that be a little inappropriate? Just as the 2 little guys were in a dilemma, a familiar voice was heard. Boss. Then, a round figure quickly ran over. However, when he got closer and closer, he also noticed the 2 little dolls that looked like they were carved out of jade. Instantly, his kind gaze turned into horror, astonishment, and disbelief. Gong Jun stared blankly for a long while before suddenly crying to Di Beichen, Boss, when did you have 2 children? You didn't even tell me. This is too much. Look, this child has grown up so well. He has completely inherited your genes. Gong Jun looked at the 2 little cuties happily. Come, tell Uncle what you like. Uncle will buy it for you. Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but laugh when she saw how quickly Gong Jun assumed the identity of an uncle. This guy was quite shrewd when it came to other things, but he didn't use his brain when it came to this kind of thing. Xiao Hei and Xiao Bai couldn't help but roll their eyes. If it was a girl showing such an adorable expression, it would have been fine. However, as a man, what was he trying to do by showing such an expression to us? No, need, any more, Xiao Hei said through gritted teeth. Gong Jun ignored her and directly carried Xiao Hei. Haha, I haven't seen such an adorable child in a long time. You're the child. Your whole family is made up of children. Xiao Hei couldn't help but curse. This guy wanted nothing more than to press his face against hers. What's with this greasy feeling? Chapter 67:14. Of course I'm familiar. I'm Xiao Hei. Little Hei raised its voice to emphasize who it was. Hearing this, Gong Jun was so scared that he let go of his hand. Xiao Hei also stood directly on the table. Oh my God, you're Xiao Hei. That's right, that's me. Xiao Hei put her hands on her hips and said aggressively. Her words were full of vigor, but with that soft face, it didn't seem convincing at all. Gong Jun looked at Xiao He, and then his gaze fell on the little boy beside her. So this is Xiao Bai? Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but nod. You're right. Gong Jun held his head and said with a blank face, It's only been a few days. What happened? Why did it become like this? That's right. The illusory form pearl. But isn't there only one illusory form pearl? How did the two of them turn into human forms? Thoughts kept appearing in Gong Jun's mind. Di Beichun calmly ordered a few dishes, and then pulled Bailey Hongzhuang to sit down. It was better to wait for Gong Jun to recover from his shock before asking, Who am I? Where am I? What happened? After struggling for a while, Gong Jun finally accepted this fact and turned to seek confirmation from Di Beichun. Boss, they couldn't have eaten the illusory form pearl together, right? That's right. Di Beichun nodded. I think that half of the illusory form pearl's effect wasn't enough, so they turned into children. Gong Jun sighed. You guys are really amazing. Normal people wouldn't dare to try something like this. Gong Jun, that's why you have to help us gather more information and find the other illusory form pearl as soon as possible. Xiao He and Xiao Bai each stood on either side of Gong Jun, holding his hand with an anxious look on their faces. Gong Jun opened his hands and hugged the two little guys to sit on his lap. With a kind face, he said, Why are you in such a hurry? I think the two of you are pretty good like this. We don't usually have children around us. Don't you think you look so cute? Xiao He and Xiao Bai's faces immediately darkened. Don't talk nonsense. Anyway, we need to get bigger as soon as possible. Good. Gong Jun nodded helplessly. I've been trying to find out more about this recently, but because there aren't many illusion form beads, I haven't received any news yet. I don't think you need to be too anxious. Since this thing exists, it will definitely be found. It's just that it will take a little more time. Seeing Gong Jun's serious expression, the two little guys sighed. Who would have thought that things would turn out like this? It was too late for regrets. That's right. I want to take them to make some new clothes later. Take us there, Bailey Hongzhuang said. Gong Jun nodded repeatedly. No problem. Make as many as you want. Leave it to me. Just as the dishes were served and everyone was about to eat, suddenly, a surprised voice was heard. Io, what a coincidence to bump into you guys when we came out to eat. Turning around, everyone saw Xiren and Shangguan Yingying walking over with faces full of joy. Chapter 67:15. When Xiren saw Xiao He and Xiao Bai, their reactions were not much better than Gong Jun's. Shangguan Yingying looked at the two cute children in surprise and said with a smile, Whose children are these? They're so cute. Let Annie hug them. Xiao He was carried up by Shangguan Yingying, and she immediately looked like she had nothing to live for. Thinking back to the scene of Bai Shi and Xiao Xuanzi transforming into their human forms, and then thinking about herself, a random person wanted to hug her and pinch her face, the difference was too great. Hongzhuang, we haven't seen each other in a while. Where did you find such cute dolls? Shangguan Yingying was overflowing with love. I don't usually like children, but these two children are just too cute. It makes me like them at first glance. I don't know why. I actually find them a little familiar. Hearing Shangguan Yingying's words, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but chuckle. It's right that you find them familiar. What do you mean? They're Xiao He and Xiao Bai. Bailey Hongzhuang did not tease Shangguan Yingying. She smiled and recounted the entire story, when Xiren's face was also filled with astonishment. It can't be. Half an illusory form pearl actually has such an effect. This matter is also beyond our expectations. Other than these two buffoons, I'm afraid no one else would have thought of doing this. Di Beichun shook his head and chuckled. This is new, but I think it's pretty good this way. What two cute dolls. It's even more interesting when they go out. Xiren smiled and teased the two little fellows. Gong Jun nodded repeatedly, clearly in agreement. Xiao He and Xiao Bai could no longer stand these fellows. Their previous wise and mighty image would probably never be found again. I heard that Bai Luchuan was confined. I wonder if this is true? Xiren restrained his joking expression. I originally wanted to teach this fellow a lesson, but this fellow doesn't go out. It's harder for us to deal with him. A mere confinement was obviously too easy for him. This guy was so hateful and narrow-minded. Confinement had almost no effect on him. Once he came out, he would definitely cause trouble for them again. Rather than that, the best way was to take the initiative to attack. However, City Lord Manor's punishment was a form of protection for Bai Luchuan. After all, they couldn't rush in and attack Bai Luchuan, right? I also heard that he was confined and his cultivation resources were also confiscated. This is what Miss Yang and the others told me. City Lord is completely disappointed in Bai Luchuan. If it wasn't for the blood relationship, I'm afraid he wouldn't be willing to bother with him, Gong Jun said slowly. Reducing his power is not bad. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows. What about Yun Xiaoman? This woman was the biggest reason for all the conflicts. He couldn't let her go just like that. I heard that Yun Xiaoman has always been living in by Liu Chuan's manor. I'm not sure what the situation is like now. Gong Jun frowned. He had nearly forgotten about this woman. These are troubled times. Yin Xiaoman should know that she definitely won't dare to show her face recently. However, you should be more careful, Di Baichen said. Boss, don't worry. Leave this matter to me. I definitely won't let her have an easy time. Bai Luchuan can't care about her now. I'll find an opportunity to take action. Chapter 67:16. Speaking of which, it's strange that Guan Hongtian hasn't done anything other than setting a trap. This isn't in line with his character. Xiren raised his eyebrows slightly with a trace of doubt. In his opinion, Guan Hongtian was a vengeful person. He cared so much about Guanyi, so how could he not do anything? That's right. We were worried that Wanbao Pavilion would make a move on us. I didn't expect them to be so quiet. It's as if nothing happened. Shang Waningying was also a little surprised. Gong Jun smiled mysteriously. Isn't it because Madam saved by Qingli? If not for that, Guan Hongtian would have made a move. It's only because we have a close relationship with the City Lord's mansion that he hasn't done anything yet. I can guarantee that as soon as we leave Xiyin City, he will immediately come back to cause trouble. As soon as he said this, everyone looked at each other and understood. It seems that we still can't let down our guard. We have to pay attention to these problems. Everyone ate while drinking and chatting. It was a very enjoyable time. Hongzhuang, I heard that you've been studying young Master Yang's condition. Have you made any progress recently? Shang Waningying was sitting next to Bailey Hongzhuang, and after pouring a glass of plum wine for her, she asked aloud. I made some progress. I didn't expect there to be something else in the poison that Granny mentioned to me before. I'm really starting to suspect that the poison in young Master Yang's body was refined by Granny Hua. If that was the case, it would be too much of a coincidence. Yang Lingfeng's luck could be said to be heaven-defying. The world is big, and there are all kinds of strange things. Although the possibility of this is not high, it's not impossible. Shangguan Ying smiled. She understood Hongzhuang's medical skills. For a poison to be studied by Hongzhuang for so long, it was enough to prove how powerful the poison maker was. Thinking about it, other than Granny Hua, no one else could do it. Even so, I still feel that this poison is more insidious than the one Granny refined. It doesn't match Granny's personality. Bailey Hongzhuang frowned slightly. This was what she didn't understand the most. If she wasn't wrong, this poison was supposed to torture people to death. If it wasn't for her grandmother's antidote, Yang Lingfeng would have died long ago. Although the poison refined by her mother-in-law was quite vicious compared to this poison, it was a little more pleasurable. Vaguely, she felt that something was wrong. She was afraid that she would have to ask Apothecary Wei about this. Perhaps she would be able to learn something. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang was thinking seriously, Shangguan Ying did not refute. Hongzhuang had the best relationship with her mother-in-law, so she knew her mother-in-law's style best. If she felt that there was something wrong, then there must be something wrong. There are so many pharmacists in the entire Immortal region. Perhaps someone else poisoned her, or perhaps it has something to do with Granny. Di Baichen comforted. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. She also felt that the possibility of this happening was very high. After a few more days, Bailey Hongzhuang finally figured out a way to detoxify the poison. Immediately, She went to the city lord's mansion with Di Baichen. Yang Han and the others were simply waiting day and night. They hoped that Apothecary Wei would come out of seclusion as soon as possible. They also hoped that Bailey Hongzhuang would come sooner. Chapter 67-17. Thankfully, Yang Han and Bai Ziyuan were familiar with each other and did not feel the slightest bit of discomfort in the governor's estate. As a result, the wait was not too long. When Bailey Hongzhuang arrived, Yang Han and Bai Ziyuan were in the middle of a game of chess. The two of them enjoyed playing chess whenever they got together. When they suddenly heard the news of Bailey Hongzhuang's arrival, the two of them ignored the game on the chessboard and hurried over. However, they had only taken a few steps into the governor's estate when Bailey Hongzhuang saw Bai Qingli and the others. She immediately smiled. "Miss Bailey, you've finally come." Bai Qingli was pleasantly surprised. While you were in closed-door cultivation, these two have been constantly asking when you would reappear. It's made me feel very helpless. It's not as exaggerated as you make it sound. Yang Qinxue hurriedly interjected. There was even some embarrassment on her face. "Miss Bailey, don't listen to his nonsense. If you all treat me as a friend, then please call me Hongzhuang." Hearing this, the three of them were delighted. "Of course, that's great. Don't be too distant when you call us that. Come to think of it, we've known each other for quite some time." Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. "All right. Hongzhuang, have you come today because there's been some progress in Lingfeng's illness?" Yang Qinxue's face was filled with concern. She could not wait to know the results, but was worried that there was no cure. "Indeed, I've made some progress." As soon as he said this, the eyes of the three lit up. Even Yang Lingfeng's face was filled with excitement. Over the past 5 years, he had seen so many pharmacists that he had almost given up hope. He never thought that hope would appear before him at this moment. It was simply too delightful. "I've come this time with the antidote that I've concocted. However, we'll only know after Lingfeng has tried it." Although Bailey Hongzhuang's words were not too certain, there was a hint of confidence in her tone. She had already tested it with Yang Lingfeng's blood. The antidote she had concocted was able to neutralize the poison. "You've already concocted the antidote?" Yang Qinxue found it hard to believe. Medicine Master Wei has been cooped up in his room all this time. We know how difficult it is to detoxify him. This poison is indeed not easy to detoxify. It's just that I have some understanding of the detoxification pill that Ling Feng took, so it's easier for me to study it. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. Apothecary Wei had been immersed in the art of healing for many years, so there was no need to mention his medical skills. She had spent so much time researching the antidote formula, so it was no surprise that Apothecary Wei was unable to figure it out. When Yang Han and Bai Ziyuan arrived and heard Bailey Hongzhuang's words, they secretly nodded their heads. This young lady was indeed different from other young people who were arrogant and complacent. She was humble and courteous, which made people satisfied. "City Lord Bai, City Lord Yang." Bailey Hongzhuang greeted them with a bow. "Miss Bailey, there's no need to be so polite. May I know if you've come to understand Lingfeng's situation?" Bai Ziyuan asked with a smile. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. "I've already concocted the antidote. If you trust me, let Lingfeng take it and we'll know the results." Hearing this, without waiting for Yang Han and the others to speak, Yang Lingfeng took the lead and said, "I trust you." Chapter 67-18. Since Lingfeng trusts you so much, we naturally trust you as well. Yang Han smiled. He wasn't worried that Bailey Hongzhuang would harm them because there was no need to. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and handed the antidote to Yang Lingfeng. "Here's the antidote, but according to my judgment, you won't feel much better after taking it. The remaining poison has been in your body for too long. If we want to force it out completely, we'll have to use some ruthless methods. That's why I've given you a heavier dose this time." This was the result of her careful consideration. The poison that Bailey Hongzhuang had given him wasn't simple to begin with. Furthermore, it had been in his body for so many years that it had almost become one with him. If they wanted to force the poison out completely, they'd have to use some ruthless methods. If they couldn't do it in one go, it'd be even more troublesome in the future. Fortunately, Yang Lingfeng was young and healthy. He should be able to handle it. Di Beichun also spoke up. Once the poison is completely removed, you might fall into a coma. However, as long as you take good care of yourself, you make a full recovery in a few days. Everyone was surprised to hear that taking the antidote would result in such a serious condition. The antidote pills they usually took wouldn't cause such a situation. The three kingdoms of Huan, Yuyang, Lingfeng didn't hesitate at all. I understand. I'll just fall into a coma. It's fine as long as I don't die. Everyone couldn't help but chuckle. It was clearly a serious matter, but when he put it that way, it didn't seem like a big deal. At this moment, Medicine Master Wei, who had been in seclusion all this time, rushed over. Little friend Bailey, you've developed the antidote so quickly. Medicine Master Wei's hoarse voice was tinged with surprise as he hurriedly asked. As soon as Bailey Hongzhuang turned her head, she saw Medicine Master Wei, whom she hadn't seen for a few days. At the moment, his clothes were covered with all kinds of medicinal herbs, and his beard was all over his mouth. His appearance was indescribably messy, and he looked completely different from when they first met. With this appearance, it was obvious that he'd been working tirelessly on his research. If she hadn't come here today, Medicine Master Wei wouldn't have been able to maintain this appearance for long. Bailey Hongzhuang told Apothecary Wei the results of her research. As for the antidote, Apothecary Wei couldn't tell if it was right or wrong. After all, he hadn't researched this area yet. Jizuan demonic concubine. Ghost Emperor, I refuse to accept this. However, after hearing about the effects of the antidote, he nodded and said, it's true that this will happen after removing the residual poison for many years. Ling Feng is young and strong, so it shouldn't be a problem. If everyone was still a little worried at first, they were no longer worried after hearing this. If that's the case, let's give it a try, Yang Qinxue said. Let's go to Ling Feng's residence. Bai Ziyuan immediately made a decision. If Ling Feng is really unconscious, you can take a look. After arriving at Yang Lingfeng's residence, he consumed the antidote. Everyone's eyes were fixed on the man. They didn't know what would happen. When he first consumed the antidote, Yang Lingfeng didn't feel anything strange. However, as time passed, he gradually felt a pain in his body. The pain intensified as time passed, and his face became paler and paler. Large beads of sweat seeped out of his forehead. He supported himself with his palm on the table, trying his best not to fall. Chapter 6719. Everyone had also noticed Yang Lingfeng's situation, and their faces were filled with concern. Yang Lingfeng shook his head weakly. His gaze was as determined as ever. Don't worry, I'm fine. However, this voice was undoubtedly much weaker than before. Bailey Hongzhuang held Yang Lingfeng's hand and checked his pulse. She was sure that the antidote she had developed would not have any problems, but the process was indeed very difficult to endure. Although his pulse feels weak, it has not affected his body. Yang Han looked nervous. He was counting on Yang Lingfeng to inherit the family business, so he could not allow anything to happen to him. However, in this situation, there was no other way but to trust Bailey Hongzhuang. The pain was getting more and more intense. Yang Lingfeng had curled up into a ball and sat on the ground. He tried his best to endure it, but did not make any sound. His face was getting paler and paler, and Bailey Hongzhuang was carefully paying attention to his changes. She was thinking that the time should be up. Yang Qinxue could not help but feel anxious when she saw this. She was worried that Bailey Hongzhuang had made a mistake. Otherwise, how could the antidote have ended up in this state? Yang Lingfeng had always had strong willpower. This was the first time she had seen him in such pain. Fantasy nirvana dust just then. Yang Lingfeng suddenly opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of black blood. Then he fainted. The black blood dripped onto the ground, and a sizzling sound was heard. The blood was mixed with some black blood clots, and the grass on the ground quickly lost its vitality. Everyone's expression changed when they saw this. Just by looking at the condition of the grass, they knew how terrifying the poison was. However, this poison had been in Yang Lingfeng's body for so many years, and no one knew about it. Just the thought of it was terrifying. Yang Han and the others quickly helped Yang Lingfeng up and asked, "What should we do now?" Bailey Hongzhuang saw that after Yang Lingfeng spat out the black blood, The blood in his mouth had turned bright red. She checked his pulse again and took out a pill and placed it in Yang Lingfeng's mouth. "Don't worry, he's fine. He's just too weak and needs to rest. After 2 hours, he should wake up." Hearing this, everyone relaxed. Bai Qingli and Yang Qinxue escorted Yang Lingfeng into the house. Yang Han could not help but stop by He Shui's side. His face was as gloomy as water. "Princess Shirgu, after so many years, no one has discovered that Ling Feng has been poisoned. If this poison continues to exist in his body, the consequences will be unimaginable once it takes effect in the future." Bai Ziwan couldn't help but speak out. This situation was truly frightening. Yang Han's face was ashen, but he couldn't help but rejoice in his heart. "Fortunately, I was able to meet Lady Bailey this time. Otherwise, I don't know when Ling Feng's condition would be discovered." He stood up and bowed deeply to Bailey Hongzhuang. "Miss Bailey, thank you for saving my life." Bailey Hongzhuang hurriedly helped Yang Han up. "City Lord Yang, you can't do that. You're our family savior. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't dare to imagine what would have happened." Yang Han knew very well that if he hadn't met Bailey Hongzhuang, even if someone had discovered the poison, it would have been very difficult to cure it. "Haven't you seen how Medicine Master Wei has been tormenting himself for so many days without any clues?" Chapter 6720. What kind of poison is in Ling Feng's body? Even after taking Granny Hua's antidote pill, he still couldn't cure it. Bai Ziyuan fell into deep thought. They were very clear about Granny Hua's reputation. Logically speaking, Granny Hua's antidote pill should be able to cure all poisons. Could it be a poison made by Granny Hua herself? How could there be such a coincidence? Medicine Master Wei couldn't help but say, "As far as I know, Granny Hua's antidote pills can't cure all poisons that she made." When Bailey Hongzhuang heard everyone mention this aspect, she immediately became interested. "According to my judgment, this poison shouldn't be made by Granny Hua. I would like to ask everyone, is there anyone in the immortal domain whose medical and poison skills are on par with Granny Hua's?" Everyone fell into deep thought when they heard this, and their expressions became very complicated. Noticing everyone's change in expression, Bailey Hongzhuang instinctively realized that there must be something going on. Granny Hua once had a disciple. Medicine Master Wei said slowly, "If it's not Granny Hua, then it's very likely to be her." Bailey Hongzhuang was slightly surprised. Granny Hua's disciple? Di Beichen's expression also changed after hearing this. They didn't hear Granny Hua mention this before. However, Bailey Hongzhuang still had some vague associations in her mind. She remembered that Granny Hua would sometimes reveal a regretful and angry expression. It was just that she didn't talk about it in depth. That's right. Granny Hua did have a disciple called Hualuo. Bai Ziwan nodded. This Hualuo's medical skills are very outstanding. She has always followed behind Granny Hua. This Hualuo is different from Granny Hua. Although Granny Hua's medical and poison skills are very good, she is a lone wolf and is very righteous. However, for some reason, this Hualuo is very sinister. Her methods are ruthless and her hands are stained with countless amounts of blood. It was because of this that Granny Hua once reprimanded Hualuo. However, Hualuo didn't listen to her and was even extremely disrespectful to Granny Hua. Some people said that a huge battle broke out between them. At that time, this news also shocked the world. Since then, no one has seen Granny Hua again. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun couldn't help but look at each other, their hearts filled with shock. Originally, they thought that there must be a reason why Granny Hua chose to live in the abandoned immortal forest. They never thought that something like this would happen. Hualuo's actions were simply deceiving her master and destroying her ancestors. Given her mother-in-law's personality, she would definitely be extremely angry. Bailey Hongzhuang had been with Granny Hua for a long time. She knew that Granny Hua had her own bottom line. She knew what she could do and what she could not do. However, he did not expect that he would have such a disciple. He must be heartbroken. What happened to Hualuo? Bailey Hongzhuang asked. From then on, Granny Hua vanished without a trace, and Hualuo joined a sect in the immortal region. Similarly, She rarely appeared before the eyes of the world. As for which sect it is, I have forgotten. However, it caused such a huge commotion at that time. As long as we go to the immortal region and ask around, we should know. Bai Ziyuan was somewhat helpless. After all, the immortal region is still quite far away from us. Chapter 67:21. Although there were many people in the immortal region who were highly skilled in the art of medicine and poison, this person's poison techniques came from the same source as Granny Hua's. Naturally, Hualuo was most likely the culprit. However, the culprit must have obtained Hualuo's poison by chance. The probability of such a coincidence happening was really small. Perhaps this was also a kind of fate. Little friend Bailey, I didn't expect you to be so familiar with Granny Hua's antidote. Medicine Master Wei sighed. I've studied it for a long time without any results. This speed is truly shameful. He was much older than Bailey Hongzhuang. Although he knew that Bailey Hongzhuang could be considered a genius in this area, he felt that the gap between them wasn't that big. However, this matter clearly showed the gap between them. Her speed was much faster than his. Although he had tried many methods during his seclusion, he had only scratched the surface. Seeing Wei Shang's sad sigh, Bailey Hongzhuang thought about it. In the end, she didn't reveal her identity as Granny Hua's disciple. This time, they had to rely on their own strength to train. If they used their master's name, it would naturally be meaningless. Notes from the Exalted Immortal. Their masters had warned them about this. Moreover, Hualuo's identity wasn't simple, and she had a grudge with Granny Hua. If they used this name, they would inevitably be noticed by Hualuo. When that time came, it would be very troublesome. At the very least, their current strength was clearly inferior to Hualuo's by a large margin. Medicine Master Wei, I just happen to have some research in this area. In my area of expertise, you're naturally at a disadvantage. Wei Shang, who was originally depressed, smiled when he heard Bailey Hongzhuang's words of consolation. Forget it. At my age, I actually need to be consoled by little friend Bailey. Speaking of which, it's really embarrassing. In the Yangtze River, each new generation excels the previous one. The student surpasses the master. If young people can have such results, everyone will be better in the future. Everyone burst into laughter when they heard that. Wei Shang was a broad-minded person. Even if he had a moment of self-doubt, he was able to quickly adjust. The arrival of the queen. The cold-hearted prince seduces a concubine when Bai Ziyuan and the others saw this scene. They secretly laughed in their hearts. This was the first time they had seen someone who could defeat Apothecary Wei to such an extent, especially when this girl was so young. He's neither arrogant nor rash, neither servile nor overbearing. He'll definitely be someone in the future. Yang Han's eyes had a deeper meaning. Whether it was Bailey Hongzhuang or Deep Beichun, who had been quiet all this time, these two little guys were obviously not ordinary people. Sooner or later, they would make a name for themselves. After being the city lord for so many years, he was still very confident in his eyesight. Bai Ziyuan nodded slightly. He could also see that there were many capable people in the younger generation, but their personality often accounted for a large part of their success. Bai Liuchuan's talent in cultivation wasn't weak either, but compared to the two of them, the difference was obvious. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, it was also very good for them to become friends with Bailey Hongzhuang and the others as soon as possible. Not to mention other things, just Bailey Hongzhuang's skill in medicine and poison had endless uses. No one could guarantee that they wouldn't be troubled by this problem in the future. Chapter 67:22. Everyone had always thought that it was Yang Lingfeng's mental illness, but who would have thought that it was actually because of this? If we had met Hongzhuang a few years earlier, Lingfeng wouldn't have had to suffer such a blow, Yang Qinchu had joked. In the past, this matter had always been a pain in Lingfeng's heart, so none of them dared to mention it, fearing that it would make Lingfeng feel inferior. But now it was all better. It was only because he was poisoned and had nothing to do with himself. Hongzhuang, thank you, Yang Lingfeng said with a serious expression. This problem had troubled him for so many years, and even his personality had become more and more eccentric. Fortunately, he had met her. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and waved her hand. No need to be so polite. I'm also happy that you've recovered. Miss Bailey, you've helped us greatly this time. I've already said before that no matter what the reward is, as long as it's something the City Lord's mansion has, we will definitely not refuse. Yang Han's expression was serious. This matter had undoubtedly solved a big problem for them, so no matter what it was, they would not go overboard. Everyone smiled, and Yang Qinxue even said, Hong Zhuang, no need to be polite, just say it. City Lord Yang, I want to ask where you got the illusion form bead. Do you know where else to find it? Bailey Hong Zhuang asked. Hearing this question, Yang Han was also a little surprised. Didn't you just get the illusion form bead a few days ago? To tell you the truth, Bei Chen and I've contracted beasts are limited by some problems and are unable to transform into human form. One illusion form bead can only solve one of the problems. There is still one that cannot be solved. Hearing this, everyone understood and couldn't help but think of the two little cuties beside Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang on the night of the banquet. The black and white nimble little dumplings left a deep impression on everyone. You husband and wife are really interesting. Even your contracted beasts are a pair. Yang Qinxue smiled, then turned to look at Yang Han. Father, where did you get the illusion form bead? That illusory form bead was obtained from a secret realm. However, I did not enter that secret realm. It was just a gift from someone else. Yang Han said. Bailey Hongzhuang finally understood. With Mayor Yang Han's status, there were naturally many people who gave him gifts. The illusory form bead was relatively precious, but it was undoubtedly excellent as a gift. The return of the queen. The daughter of a rich family is reborn. Is it possible for the illusory bead to appear in the secret realm? Di Beichen asked. Xiao He and Xiao Bai's current forms were indeed quite good, but they were still missing an illusory form pearl. If they could find it, it would undoubtedly be the best. I have never asked this question. When I return, I will help you ask around. If he still has more illusion form beads, I will directly buy them. Yang Han said with a smile. Many thanks, City Lord Yang. Di Beichen cupped his hands. Yang Han waved his hand. This is just a small matter. You have helped me so much, but this small matter is unable to repay you. City Lord Yang does not need to be so polite. We are already friends with young Master Yang, so it is naturally not worth mentioning. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was calm. In her heart, friends were different from ordinary people. Healing a friend was what she should do, so why would she need to think about this? Chapter 67-23. Everyone had always thought that it was Yang Lingfeng's mental illness, but who would have thought that it was actually because of this? If we had met Hong Zhuang a few years earlier, Lingfeng wouldn't have had to suffer such a blow, Yang Qinxue joked. In the past, this matter had always been a pain in Lingfeng's heart, so none of them dared to mention it, fearing that it would make Lingfeng feel inferior. But now it was all better. It was only because he was poisoned, and it had nothing to do with him. Hong Zhuang, thank you, Yang Lingfeng said with a serious expression. This problem had troubled him for so many years, and even his personality had become more and more eccentric. Fortunately, he had met her. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and waved her hand. No need to be so polite. I'm also happy that you have recovered. Miss Bailey, you have helped us greatly this time. I've already said before that no matter what the reward is, as long as it is something that the City Lord's mansion has, we will definitely not refuse. Yang Han's expression was serious. This matter had undoubtedly solved a big problem for them, so no matter what it was, they would not go overboard. Everyone smiled, and Yang Qinxue said, Hong Zhuang, you don't have to be so polite, just say it. City Lord Yang, I want to ask where you obtained the illusion form bead. Do you know where to find it? Bailey Hongzhuang asked. Hearing this question, Yang Han was a little surprised. Didn't you just get the illusion form bead a few days ago? To tell you the truth, Bei Chen and I've contracted beasts are limited by some problems and are unable to take human form. One illusion form bead can only solve one of the problems. There is still one that cannot be solved. Hearing this, everyone understood, and they couldn't help but think of the two little cuties beside Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang on the night of the banquet. The black and white nimble little dumplings left a deep impression on everyone. You husband and wife are really interesting. Even your contracted beasts are a pair. Yang Qinxue smiled, then turned to look at Yang Han. Father, where did you get the illusion form bead? That illusory form bead was obtained from a secret realm. However, I did not enter that secret realm. It was just a gift from someone else. Yang Han said. Bailey Hongzhuang finally understood. With Mayor Yang Han's status, there were naturally many people who gave him gifts. The illusory form bead was relatively precious, but it was undoubtedly excellent as a gift. Is it possible for the illusory bead to appear in the secret realm? Di Beichen asked. Xiao He and Xiao Bai's current forms were indeed quite good, but they were still missing an illusory form pearl. If they could find it, it would undoubtedly be the best. I have never asked this question before. When I return, I will help you ask around. If he still has more illusory form beads, I will directly buy them, Yang Han said with a smile. Many thanks, City Lord Yang. Di Beichen cupped his hands. Yang Han waved his hand. This is just a small matter. You have helped me so much, but this small matter is unable to repay you. City Lord Yang does not need to be so polite. We are already friends with young Master Yang, so it is naturally not worth mentioning. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was calm. In her heart, friends were different from ordinary people. Healing a friend was what she should do, so why would she need to think about this? Chapter 67-24. Yang Han chuckled. You've seen it too. If I don't thank you properly, I'm afraid my daughter will despise me. Yang Han took out a Cosmos pouch and handed it to Bailey Hongzhuang. Here are the cultivation resources you youngsters need. I can see that your talents are extraordinary. I'm sure you'll be able to break through to the elementary immortal stage. These cultivation resources will help you break through. Apart from that, this is the City Lord's Estates Medallion. If you come to Qingyang City in the future, this will be convenient for you too. Looking at the token Yang Han handed over, Bailey Hongzhuang hesitated for a moment before accepting it. Many thanks, Lord Yang. She understood the value of the medallion. It was even more precious than the cultivation resources. Once they arrived at Qingyang City, the effects of the medallion could be imagined. Although they didn't know what kind of secret realm they had gone to, if there was hope, they would very likely take a look. Naturally, the medallion would come in handy. Bai Ziyuan was rather surprised when he saw Yang Han give the medallion to Bailey Hongzhuang. However, he understood the value of the two of them, so it wasn't excessive. Yang Qinxue finally showed a satisfied expression. That's more like it. If the city lord was too stingy, no one would be able to stand it. Bailey Hongzhuang took her leave after writing down the prescription. Yang Lingfeng would probably need at least 3 days to recover from his weakened state. Yang Han also said that he would clarify the situation as soon as possible and tell them the news, so they only needed to wait patiently. After returning to their residence, Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the cultivation resources Yang Han had given them. She was rather surprised. City Lord Yang is really generous. He actually gave us so many things. These cultivation resources were even more abundant than the rewards they had received from the monster slaughter competition. Di Beichen smiled faintly. Yang Lingfeng is City Lord Yang's only son. You saved his life, so City Lord Yang is naturally very grateful. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Even if it were her, there was nothing more important than the life of a family member. With these cultivation resources, I think we can go into seclusion for a while. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head and smiled faintly. The Brilliant Sun Realm was a process of accumulation. It required the cultivator to constantly accumulate spirit power until one day they had a clear idea of what was going on. Only then would there be a possibility of a breakthrough. According to Gong Jun, many cultivators have been stuck in this realm for decades or even centuries. Although the people in the immortal realm of chaos looked young, they were actually hundreds of years old. It was only because they had cultivated to this level that their lifespans were much longer. That was why it was hard to tell. It was said that after breaking through to the elementary immortal stage, one would look even younger. At their age, they were definitely very young in the serene Cloud City. Fortunately, at this point in time, no one would ask each other's age. Cultivation was the most important thing. Lifespan would increase as one's strength increased, so it was meaningless to ask. Because of that, Glorious Sun Realm cultivators would frequently enter secluded cultivation. Once they entered secluded cultivation, they would stay in secluded cultivation for a long time. Everyone was hoping to break through to the elementary celestial realm one day. That was a completely different realm. Once one broke through, one could be called an immortal. Chapter 6725. Di Beichen also knew that Bailey Hongzhuang had always been interested in this field, but because she had to detoxify Yang Lingfeng, she spent all her time on it. Now that this problem had been solved, she naturally had time to study the things she was interested in. These demon crystals are useless to everyone, so they are all here for you to study. Di Beichen placed the Qinquan pouch beside Bailey Hongzhuang, his handsome face rippling with a faint smile. Thank you. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the Qinquan pouch. The number of demon crystals inside was very plentiful. Although there were quite a few monsters in Xiyin City, the price of demon crystals wasn't cheap because everyone knew that it had a good effect for alchemists, so they just sat there and raised the price. Wife, you can refine pills in the room. I heard from Gongjun that there is an exchange of array masters in the city today. I plan to go take a look. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Okay, since she had learned this craft, she naturally needed to interact with others. Di Beichen was not only good at array techniques, but he was also good at talisman techniques. Presumably, she had also interacted with some alchemists, but Di Beichen had never interacted with anyone before. It was indeed time for her to go out and interact with others. Then you should pay attention. It's just a small exchange. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. Now that they had some status in Xiyin City, the possibility of trouble was not high. Moreover, Gongjun was there. This guy had always been tactful in dealing with people, so naturally there was no need to worry. Xiao He and Xiao Bai were also interested in the exchange of array masters, so they followed Di Beichen to have some fun. Bailey Hongzhuang began to study the method of refining demon crystals. Although there were already people who had successfully used this method to increase the efficacy of pills, it was not always successful. Bailey Hongzhuang didn't try it out rashly. Instead, she followed Apothecary Way's instructions to refine a successful pill. Recovery pill. This was a basic pill formula that cultivators often used. Although it was relatively simple to refine, it had always been highly recommended because of its high demand. It was said that before this, someone had successfully added the demon crystal into the vitality recovery pill, and the effect of the pill refined was much better than usual. Bailey Hongzhuang just so happened to have a lot of medicinal ingredients for the vitality recovery pill in her hands, so she began to act. How to refine a demon crystal was undoubtedly the most difficult problem for an alchemist. The outer layer of the crystal-like shell gradually began to melt under the heat of the alchemy fire, and the bright red liquid inside flowed out. Bailey Hongzhuang controlled the alchemy fire and carefully sensed the situation in the alchemy furnace with her spiritual power. Sure enough, just as everyone had said, there was a trace of dark force and murderous qi in the demon crystal. If she wanted to use this thing in medicine, she must eliminate these two forces. Only by turning them into the purest force could she safely refine the pill. Bailey Hongzhuang tried to refine the dark force and murderous qi, but found that it was not an easy task. These two forces seemed to be dependent on each other and were difficult to separate. Although there was a tendency to gradually decrease with the refining of the alchemy fire, the volume of the liquid in the demon crystal was also constantly decreasing. Chapter 6726. Almost immediately, Bailey Hongzhuang understood that this would not work. Once she did this, there would be too little essence left. It would be a complete waste. After spending so much effort, if there was only so little left in the end, it would not be worth it. No wonder so many pharmacists were unable to successfully develop it. So this is the biggest difficulty. Bailey Hongzhuang understood. It seemed that she had to think of another way. The dark energy in her body gradually appeared. Bailey Hongzhuang tried to directly absorb the dark energy in the demon crystal. The result was out of her expectations. This was because the dark energy was easily absorbed. Not only that, she found that this dark energy was especially pure. It was purer than the energy that she usually absorbed. It was really interesting. I did not expect the dark energy in the demon crystal to be so pure and condensed. Absorbing is actually very beneficial. Although the demon crystal was still filled with a murderous aura, after the dark energy disappeared, it seemed to have lost its support. Refining it was much easier than before. Bailey Hongzhuang was pleasantly surprised. She did not expect that the problem that everyone thought to be so difficult to solve would be solved so easily. Thinking about it, it would be easier for any pharmacist with the dark attribute to refine the demon crystal. However, it would be much more difficult for pharmacists with other attributes to refine it. After she removed all the impurities in the demon crystal, the bright red liquid looked like a crystal clear ruby. It was very beautiful. She took out the essence and began to refine the pill. According to Pharmacist Way, the demon crystal was to be added at the last step of refining the pill. However, she had to pay attention to the timing. Because everyone did not have much experience on this point, they had to rely on trial and error. Therefore, Bailey Hongzhuang could only try it herself. Whether it was the timing or the amount, she had to slowly figure it out. Chila, Bailey Hongzhuang had only just put the demon crystal in for a moment. The pill was directly destroyed and could no longer be condensed. Seeing this, she did not care. She did not expect to succeed immediately. She immediately removed the impurities in the pill furnace and began refining again. Chila, failure after failure. Bailey Hongzhuang frowned slightly. She began to record the amount and time of the changes in the demon crystal essence. In the beginning, other than failure, there was almost no change. However, as time went by, she gradually discovered some clues. The time of failure would be different, and the dregs of the failed pills would also be different. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows slightly. She understood that this was a research that required ample time. Fortunately, she still had time now, so there was no need to rush. Once she succeeded, the effects of the pills in the future would be even more effective. That would really be the best thing that could happen. At that time, she could tell Granny Hua about her new results. Time flew by quickly as they focused on refining pills. Bailey Hongzhuang had just recorded the results of the previous batch of pills and was about to continue refining when she saw Xiao He walking back. This little baby was originally very cute, but now that he was angry, he actually looked very naive. Chapter 67-27. Bailey Hongzhuang carried Xiao He in her arms. Her chubby little face was filled with resentment. She reached out and poked Xiao He in a fit of pique and asked, "What happened?" "Master." Xiao He tugged at the woman's hand coquettishly. That exchange between the array masters just now was simply too infuriating. Bailey Hongzhuang furrowed her brows. She had thought that this was just a simple exchange and that there shouldn't be any problems. However, from the looks of it, this exchange seemed to have caused a disturbance as well. Ever since the male master had left, there was an extremely young-looking fellow in there who had acted as if nothing was wrong with his eyes or his nose. His words were always directed at him. I don't know who this fellow is either. Everyone else was also siding with this fellow. They were so flattering that it was as if they wished that they could follow behind him and carry his shoes. However, the male master was able to keep his cool and wasn't angry at all. However, when I saw that man's arrogant and complacent look, I couldn't stand it any longer. Then what happened after that? Bailey Hongzhuang's expression turned cold. She had never heard of the array masters in the city before. However, since this person had been able to garner so much flattery from so many array masters, he must either have an extraordinary status or his array skills were exceptional. Since he looked so young, and yet he was able to garner so much respect from so many people, there must be a reason for that. I don't know what happened after that either. However, the atmosphere at the time was simply too infuriating. Xiao Bai and I wanted to throw a tantrum, but the male master held us back. After that, we returned home. Xiao He looked gloomy. Actually, I wanted to continue staying there. I don't know if that fellow would do something even more outrageous. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's heart was a little unhappy, but she was not worried. Since Beichun was willing to continue staying there, he must have his reasons. Regardless of the other party's identity, since this was Xiyun City, there was no need to worry about his safety for now. We will know when Beichun returns. Bailey Hongzhuang patted Xiao Hei's head and said, "You have to change your impatient personality. Sometimes, you have to be patient so that you won't be taken advantage of." "Master, that guy was too much." He spoke as if the male master didn't know anything about formations. Even Gong Jun was ridiculed. If that's the case, I'm afraid that this person is truly capable. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows slightly. If the other party only had a noble status, then after knowing the influence of Beichun's array stone in Xiyun City, it was impossible for him to speak so arrogantly. Therefore, to be able to do this under such circumstances, it proved that this person was most likely a very powerful array master. That's not the real deal. Little Black curled his lips. Look at his arrogant face. It's inevitable for cultivators from other professions to be a little arrogant. This person has always been flattered by others. It's normal for him to have such a temper. Bailey Hongzhuang raised the corners of her lips. I think he must have heard that Beichun's array stone is selling extremely well and feels that it has affected his prestige. That's why he's deliberately targeting him. It was impossible for someone to target someone for no reason. Every seemingly inexplicable situation had a reason behind it. Only mediocre people are not envied. Chapter 67:28. Now that she thought about it carefully, what her master had said was true. If the male master was not capable, he would be ignored at such an event. However, this person had been picking on her ever since the male master had appeared. The problem was very clear. "Master, now that you've said that, I'm not so angry anymore." Xiao Hei smiled and played with her little braids. The gloominess on her face had disappeared. "Oh, you." Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head helplessly. "Don't be so impatient when you encounter such things. We've encountered many things along the way, so we've gradually calmed down." "Oh." Xiao Hei dragged her words. Actually, she understood this point as well. However, she had always been a person who abhorred evil. After so many years, it had been deeply ingrained in her, and it was very difficult for her to change. She already had an adorable little face. Now that she had an aggrieved look on her face, anyone who looked at her would feel sorry for her. Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but soften her tone when she spoke. Forget it, forget it. Who asked you to be such an adorable little fellow? As long as you're happy." Hearing her master's doting words, Xiao Hei's eyes filled with joy. "Master, I knew that you're the best." Good girl. Not long after Xiao Hei had returned, Di Beichun and Gong Jun's figures appeared in the courtyard. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly walked out of the house. "You're back." Di Beichun was a little surprised when he saw that the woman had taken the initiative to welcome them. Usually, whenever Hongzhuang went into closed-door cultivation to refine pills, she would enter a state where she would forget to eat and sleep. If she did not complete her research, she would not come out for the time being. However, when he saw Xiao Hei next to her, he understood what was going on. "I heard from Xiao Hei that your participation in the Formation Masters exchange this time did not go well." Bailey Hongzhuang asked gently. "It's all right." Di Beichun smiled faintly. Gong Jun, who was standing to one side, could not help but say, "Madam, that's because you didn't go. You don't know how infuriating that fellow's words were. He speaks so arrogantly as if he's a grandmaster. What a joke." Gong Jun, Di Beichun looked at the gloomy fellow with a serious expression. Gong Jun could not help but shut his mouth, but the gloominess on his face. Bailey Hongzhuang is... "Madam, you really have a divine foresight. How did you even guess that?" Gong Jun looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in astonishment. His appearance was simply like prostrating himself on the ground. If he did not have such a reputation, he would not have taken the initiative to cause trouble for you in front of so many people. Bailey Hongzhuang looked calm. Ever since the news of her saving by Qingli spread, everyone knew about their relationship with the city lord's mansion. If they did not have a certain background, who would not give face to the city lord's mansion. Shun Duanyu is a formation master who has been in the limelight in recent years. He is extremely famous in the chaotic immortal realm. Countless people fight to buy the formation stones he makes. Although Shun Duanyu's age isn't considered old, his position among array masters is top-notch. Although Gong Jun did not want to praise this arrogant fellow, he still had to speak from the facts. Chapter 67-29. In the area of array stones, any shop that has Shun Duanyu's array stones is equivalent to having an additional golden signboard. Previously, I tried to find a way to get in touch with him in hopes of buying his array stones at a high price. In this way, at least in the area of array stones, I can surpass Wan Bao Pavilion. However, this guy is really too arrogant. I've asked people to see him several times, but to no avail. Every day, he says how busy he is, but I can't even see his shadow. This time, his appearance in Xiyin City is really surprising, so I wanted to take a look. Speaking up to here, Gong Jun's anger had nowhere to vent. If I knew this guy's temper was like this, I wouldn't have begged him. His words are simply infuriating. Most importantly, the people around this guy still remember that I went to see him. So he used it against me. It's fine if he humiliated me, but he even humiliated boss. This is too much. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang also understood. If it wasn't for the incident with Gong Jun, the other party wouldn't have been able to find Beichun in such a short time. Coincidentally, with this incident, Beichun became the substitute they found when they couldn't find him. Naturally, this sense of superiority came. What did he say after that? Bailey Hongzhuang turned to look at Di Beichun. You only passively provoked by the other party and didn't fight back. This doesn't fit your personality. Looking at the girl's lively appearance, Di Beichun's smile gradually widened. His smile was also filled with doting. No one knows me better than my wife. How did you do it? Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows. Even though she knew that Beichun wouldn't be bullied by the other party like this, she was still curious about how he did it. I heard that they were discussing the layering method of trapping arrays. There was one point that they couldn't figure out. As a newcomer, I conveniently gave him some pointers. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but chuckle. So, you deliberately watched him humiliate you? Isn't this better? Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Indeed, just a second ago, the other party had been lecturing Beichun about his lack of knowledge about formations. And in the next moment, Beichun had used his true ability to show him what a true formation was. This was a resounding slap to the face. Madam, you didn't see Shun Duanyu's expression at that time. It was too wonderful. Gong Jun couldn't help but laugh. Even when I think about it now, I still find it very funny. Haha. Xiao Hei's face turned gloomy when she heard the story. There's still something so interesting after that. I actually left first and didn't even see it. What a waste. That's why I told you to calm down first. If you had stirred up trouble then, there wouldn't have been such a good show later. Gong Jun patted Xiao Hei's head with a smug look on his face. Xiao Hei slapped Gong Jun's hand. Take your salty pig trotters away. My head isn't something that just anyone can touch. Little girl, you're so soft and small, but your temper is quite big. You're so cute, so I just like to pat your head. What do you think? Gong Jun had a roguish look on his face. In the past, when Xiao Hei was angry, it was very interesting. Now that she was a little girl, her angry look was even more interesting. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.